Welcome to episode 3 of Military Veterans Podcast, where we talk to veterans to learn about their stories and experiences. And today we are joined by Daniel Grobler. And he's smiling at me right now because I think I've just messed up his surname. Hi Dan, how you doing?
Not too bad, Gav, thank you. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing okay. And thank you for letting me try to say your surname, but could you just explain it to everybody listening?
I can do. The correct pronunciation is Grobler. It's a bit guttural and it sounds gross. A lot of the English people do struggle with it. Scottish people can sometimes say it correctly. Some Irish people can say it correctly, but for a lot of the English people, just to try and help them out, I just say Grobler.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier.
That's how I know you.
Cool. Happy with that.
That was the first time I tried to say it properly.
Yeah, no, you did quite well, I must be honest. I've heard worse.
Thank you. So this episode is yours, right? And I'm really excited to see what you want to share and the experiences that you've gone through. So let's start at the very beginning. Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Zimbabwe, but then moved to South Africa in 1985 with my family, my brother, mom, and dad. And I grew up in Johannesburg. Quite a dangerous place nowadays, but back in the day it was a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Went to school, started from primary school straight when we got into the country, and made a lot of good friends, some with me here in the UK in Sheffield. Really, really good experiences growing up in South Africa. Very different to the UK, I must be honest.
I bet. I've never been myself. However, it is on the so-called bucket list.
Happy days.
I was meant to be going this November, but due to the world crazy pandemic we're going through, I don't know if that's going to happen.
We've got a holiday booked in November to go to Cape Town as well, but like you say, if they do allow us into the country, the quarantine coming back might be a bit of a drama, so
yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see if we both go, but I didn't know that. There we go. We've learned something already. So when did you come over to the UK?
In 2002, June 2002, 4 days after I got married, in fact. My wife and I came across, and we came across with 2 suitcases, landed in Haywards Heath in sort of the east side of the country, southeast, and started our journey in the UK there.
Wow, okay. So I didn't know that. I love it already. So I'm going to actually ask if we can pause from 2002 and let's just backtrack a bit, because that's a big chunk of time between you being born and you coming over here. So is there anything you want to talk about, like your time at school or how was that life like? Because obviously being a Brit, I know what that's like with growing up, but I don't know what it's like in that part of the world.
School was one of those things that we had to do. We didn't have a choice. I enjoyed school to the point where I was able to get together with my friends. I was very good with things like some of the subjects like biology and science. It was very interesting to myself. Maths was not one of my strong points and still isn't. I enjoyed learning about chemistry and things like that to the point where I was in Standard 8, which would be probably your grade 10. Just before the school holidays in summer, I decided to make a chlorine bomb that went off in my hand. Not a good idea. So
in
the rest,
school?
No, fortunately at home. Which then, there were some incidents at school with toilets that mysteriously blew up, but I wouldn't know anything about that.
I know this is being recorded, but I think you'll be okay. So what is school like over there? Is it very similar to how we have it set up in the UK?
Not so much. We don't have any schools like the UK and America, where some of them have no uniforms. We have blazers that we wear with school ties and stuff. Now, I attended mostly English schools, but being born Afrikaans, one of the later part of my years in high school, I attended a Afrikaans high school, which was totally different. In the English schools, you wear grey flannel trousers all the way, long trousers, and the style of teaching is a little bit more relaxed. It's not as should we say, harsh as the Afrikaans style of teaching. The English style of teaching, you go to school, they teach you about the subjects, your history, geography, math, science, all that sort of stuff. It was very strange going to an Afrikaans school because, like I said, towards the end of my school career, my dad moved with a family to an Afrikaans area. And instead of having long trousers and stuff, you wore shorts in high school, which was alien to me. Instead of your grey trousers, we were wearing khaki. So it was a very Afrikaans thing, and it's a very cultural thing. And it's totally different in an Afrikaans school because the culture between English and Afrikaans is very, very different. English is a little bit more laid back. Afrikaans is very, very sort of down the line. If you mess up and if you stir the shit in school, you're going to get hammered. And I was regularly in the headmaster's office getting a hiding. So, to the point where before we start school, I would just walk down to the headmaster's office and go, look, I'm probably going to see you a bit later. Should we get this sorted now? So, I was quite a naughty kid in school. I must be honest. I was a little terrorist.
Okay. And so where did you go to school? What town or city was that? Is that in South Africa?
Yeah, they're all in South Africa. Why I say we grew up mostly in Johannesburg was it's very similar to the military sort of style of life. Every 2 to 3 years, my dad would be moved into a different department. So he was working on the gold mines as a purchasing manager. So we started off in Johannesburg, and then we sort of moved out to the countryside as we know it, with the Afrikaans people, and then 2 or 3 years later we'd come back, and then 2 or 3 years later go to a different part of the countryside. So we moved around South Africa quite a lot. More the upper part of South Africa, never down towards the coast, Cape Town sort of area. We were all sort of in the centre, as we know it as Transvaal. So those are all sort of English Afrikaans areas. So Johannesburg is very English, and then we'd move to an Afrikaans area. Back to Johannesburg, back to a different Afrikaans area. So my Afrikaans, I'm very bilingual, more Afrikaans than anything else. As you can probably hear, the accent's still quite strong. And I've been in the UK now just on almost 20 years now. So with moving back and forth, we started off in Johannesburg, then went to a place called Brits, which is very, very Afrikaans. Came back to Johannesburg and then moved to the Lydenburg area, which is Nelspruit, sort of far northeast sort of side, almost in Mozambique sort of border area. Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, sort of, we were within hours of the border. And South Africa is a big, big country.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. And what would you do when school wasn't on, like weekends or after school?
I would normally get together with some of my friends from school, friends from the local areas, cousins, all that sort of stuff. We were quite a close family sort of system. And we would get our bicycles when we were very young, and we would build ramps in the garden and see who could jump the furthest, the highest, start getting into skateboards, and we'd try and do the same things. Fortunately, touch wood, I didn't break any bones there. But it was close. I was often in the hospital and doctors with stitches and stuff, but never broke any bones. When we grew up a little bit, I'd have friends on the farms. So holidays were spent on the farms, riding horses, milking cows, shooting air rifles at a young age. And then, when you get older into high school sort of time, then you start shooting rifles and you go hunting and that sort of stuff. That would be pretty much what we do. And then I got into motorbikes, which then just grew and grew and grew to the point where I now have 2 motorbikes, one for each occasion, off-roading, and then one for when I need to be more gentlemanly, shall we say.
Brilliant. So I suppose the next question would be, what made you come over to the UK? So I know you mentioned 2002 was
That's
when you
right.
moved over.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned briefly that was when you were married.
That's right.
But what did that look like? Was that a build-up over many years? Or
that part of the story probably goes all the way back to why we left Zimbabwe, or Rhodesia, as it was in the time. I was born on Independence Day in Zimbabwe on the 18th of April, 79. And that's when Mugabe took over, and we all know how that ended up. In 1985, when we moved, the situation in Zimbabwe got that bad that we had to move for safety reasons. And then in 1994, the South African government chose Mandela to be the president from F.W. de Klerk. And we saw, or my dad at least saw, that the situation was heading very, very similar to the way that we had to leave Zimbabwe. So my dad called my brother and I into the room, and he said, look, when you guys are finished with school, it would probably be better if you left the country for safety reasons and for your careers progressing forward and stuff like that. And in 2001, I decided to try and get to Australia because my cousin had moved to Melbourne. Tried to get work there, but it was very difficult because Australia was having issues with a lot of the Asian people coming in and seeking asylum. So it made it very difficult for me on a holiday visa to try and find any work. They're very, very strict in Australia. And I thought, you know what, Australia wasn't the plan. My fiancée at the time had worked in the UK in Colchester as a au pair. And she suggested maybe we could come to the UK and see if we could make a living here. And she got in touch with a couple of people. She got a job as a dental nurse, and I started looking at the brother of my wife at the time's. So his brother had a dental lab where they make crowns and bridges and false teeth and type of things like that. And I started doing plaster molds for them, and that's how I started. And then through a couple of people and a couple of shows, air shows and stuff like that, started looking into getting into the military. But nice. That's got a backstory to that as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, if you're happy, why don't we jump right into that?
No worries. So when I was in high school in Leidenburg, which is near Nelspruit, the last couple of years in high school, I joined the commando unit. Now, the commando unit started back in the Boer War type of thing. The closest way I can describe it to people who don't know what the commando unit is probably like the TA. It's not the full army, but it's your introduction into the military. At the same time, the government had taken away national service 2 years before I left school. So I thought I would like to follow the family tradition. My dad was a flight sergeant in the RAF in Zimbabwe when he was there. My mom's eldest brother was a para in the Zimbabwe army. Wow. And jumped out, broke his back, and that didn't really go well for him. He became a pastor instead. All of my cousins had done their military service, and I thought, you know what, I'd like to try that. That's something that I think the discipline is what I would like to try and have. Joined the commando unit in Leidenburg and did that for a number of years and really enjoyed it. But the military, because the government had changed, just wasn't what it was. So I then gave that up. And then when we came to the UK, my wife at the time decided, you know, it's something that you wanted to pursue, and why don't you see if you can do it here? Went to a couple of air shows and stuff like that, Southend Air Show specifically. Went to a Navy stand and started speaking to the recruiters. They said, unfortunately, I couldn't join at the time because I hadn't been in the country for 5 years, and I also didn't have a British passport. Went across to the RAF stand a couple of shows later, saw if I could become a pilot there, because that's something I was quite interested in. And they had the same sort of thing, you know, you haven't been in the country for 5 years and you don't have a British passport. And I thought, well, if two of the three arms are going to say no, the army are going to say no as well. And then in 2003, when the Southend Air Show was again there was a para stand, and they had shooting, and I went up and I did a bit of shooting, and they said, oh, you know, you've really got an eye for this. Why don't you join the army? And I told them the story about the Navy and the Air Force, and they said, no, the Army's different. The Army will just take everybody. So I was quite excited about that, and that was the Saturday. The Monday after that, I was in the Chelmsford recruiting office, and I signed up to be a para initially, which because my uncle was a para, and I thought, getting paid to jump out of the back of an aeroplane with a parachute on, it just couldn't see any better. Went for the weekend selection type thing for the paras, did a lot of training before the time, because our I don't know what you call it nowadays, BPFA, PFAs, the fitness test basically.
Yeah.
Normal soldiers and stuff would get 10.5 minutes to do a 1.5 miles, and then your press-ups and your sit-ups, whereas the paras had to do it in 9.5 because they needed to be fitter and stronger and faster and whatever. Did all of that, got through, and then at the final interview on the weekend, when they said, look, you've passed through as a para by the skin of your teeth, because you got in at 9 minutes 28, and I thought, well, for training in a pair of DC skateboard shoes and not having proper training shoes, that didn't turn out too badly. But they said, I'm 6'6". At the time I weighed 110 kilograms. They said, if you jumped out of the back of an aeroplane, you wouldn't be able to have a lot of kit with you. So we suggest possibly going for your second choice. What was it? And I said it was the Army Air Corps. And they said, why do you want to join the Army Air Corps? And I said, because initially I wanted to become a helicopter pilot. And with that, I think it was a colonel or a brigadier at the time said to me, they're going to push my paperwork through for the Army Air Corps so that I could go and try and become a pilot. And I then, within 3 weeks, I then started basic training in Winchester.
Wow, man.
Yeah, so it was very, very quick from the time going to Chelmsford Recruitment Centre to actually being in uniform.
Yeah. Being
shouted at by people on the parade square.
Wow, we'll come on to that very shortly. That's such a whirlwind experience. So I didn't know that 5 years of being in the country was needed, and a British passport and all of that stuff. So thanks for teaching us that.
No worries.
That's really good. And so what year and month is this that you just spoke about with doing the para aspect?
Well, my first... When I took the Oath of Allegiance was the 31st of October 2003. So from then, technically, I was in the military. So that would have been probably about a month before then. It really wasn't long from the time that I did the selection to the time of actually starting my basic training.
Wow, really quick.
So it was very, very quick, which was good because I wasn't really happy with what I was becoming career-wise. And I thought a bit of discipline and structure would be a good idea.
Okay. And so where did you do basic training?
Basic training was done in Winchester, which is a home for a lot of the different corps, a lot of Army Air Corps people. But to be honest, I think in my section there was 3, funny enough, South African people. I was one of them, and 2 other South African guys that I'd never met before. Although a lot of people go, Frankopoulos is from South Africa, do you know him? And I'm like, well, South Africa isn't a small village, it's a couple of thousand people in there. But that often happens. I've got a friend in Johannesburg. But yeah, there were a couple of Army Air Corps people in Winchester that I probably never really saw again. Each Army Air Corps, although being a very, very small corps, people disperse all over the countryside, different regiments and squadrons and stuff. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So is that basic training?
That's right. Yep.
Because
it's 12 weeks.
12 weeks.
Yep.
Cool. Because I did my basic training at Lichfield.
Okay.
And I was part of the first kind of group of engineers that were trialing out to go there.
Okay.
I do forget the name of the place that it's normally done at, which isn't there anymore. I'm drawing a blank. I bet the engineers are shouting at me right now. I never went there, but...
Okay. It'll come back to you at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, probably. I'm really sorry, guys, if you're shouting at the radio or your iPhone here, but nah, it's not there. It's not coming to me. So that's where I did basic.
Happy.
And then because I was Royal Engineers, I went down south and did so-called
trade training. That's right. Yep.
So where did you do that? Where's that done for the Army Air Corps?
For the Army Air Corps, the Phase 2 training is done in Middle Wallop, which is not too far from Stonehenge.
Okay.
Yeah. We're within stone throws distance away from Stonehenge, and it's a beautiful open area. The Army Air Corps, all of my postings were all ex-RAF bases, which was quite nice. Big airfields, normally in the middle of nowhere, which was quite nice because I'm a very country person, so I like being out in the open. I'm not a big fan of all the buildings and stuff like that all around me. So yeah.
And what does the Army Air Corps do in that phase of training?
We go through a couple of different trades. So I think I started with refueling, in fact. So we learn how to refuel the helicopters on what they call a FARP, forward arming refueling point. I think is it's been a number of years since I've been out of the army now, but basically we get trained to refuel the aircraft safely, rearm it with ammunition for the door gunners, and at the time we were still learning to do tow missiles. We did a couple of weeks of that. They teach you all of the safety aspects. You go through your hazardous material sort of things that you need to do for that because you're working with aviation fuel. From there, we then did a signals course, basic radio operator course, because you need to talk to the helicopters when they're coming into your refueling point, what they need, how much they need of it. So you need to be able to speak correctly with the radio procedures and stuff. And then the other one was arming. So we did refueling. The normal ground crew. So your ground crew would then set out an area where the helicopter would land, and with that you need to do approach and departure areas and paths. So you learn about how quickly the helicopter will take off and sort of what angle it needs to have clearance before it can then pick up speed and then take off. What things to look out for, how the pilot needs to see where the landing points are going to be, and setting up the FARP area. So those three are the trades that you will do a basic bit in Phase 2 training. And then once you've done those three, you then go away to Leconfield, where you do your driver's course. So every Army Air Corps soldier at the time, I don't know if it's changed now, will learn to drive, get your C+E licenses. Once you've done your C+E and you're able to drive tankers and stuff, you then learn to use the drops, again at the time, with your low loaders so that you can get ammunition and all your big truck licenses for the army. Once you've done that, you'll do your hazmat license, which then allows you to drive fuel tankers. And then you go back to your unit, and then at your unit, when you go to your first unit, then they teach you what your trade's going to be. So you'll either be signals, ground crew, or refuelers. So depending on how good your aptitude is or where they need different soldiers at the time, will then tell you where you're going to go.
Nice. And what did you do?
I was very fortunate to go ground crew because it's an easier transition from ground to becoming air crew, whereas the signals guys were, it's difficult to say, they would normally go more to the Apache squadrons, and once you're Apache you stay with the Apache platform, whereas more of the ground crew guys would then stay with the Lynx Mark 7 and Mark 9 at the time, and if you're fortunate enough to go to either Belize or Brunei, then you work with the Bell 212, which is the Huey style aircraft, and then with each of those will then depend on your role as to what that aircraft is rolled out to do.
Interesting, man.
Yeah, it's good.
We'll definitely dive into that a bit further. But I just want to touch on training. So it sounds like the Army Air Corps is very similar to the Royal Engineers, as I was. So basic training, then you got Phase 2.
Yep.
And then you go off and do your, for us it's our trade training. That's when we go off And because my main trade in the Royal Engineers was driver and ended up being a crane operator, the so-called basic part of being a driver is at Leckensfield.
Oh, okay.
So I went to the same phase 3 as you.
Yeah.
And doing hazmat blew my mind. I think I was still 17 when I went up there. Learning. Also in phase 2, I think I did my B license because I wasn't driving.
Okay, right.
Was you already a driver?
Yes.
By then?
I forgot to mention when I joined the army, I was already probably about 23, so I was quite a late bloomer.
Right.
Because I'd had a couple of jobs in Civvy Street in South Africa before the time, and I was already. We get our licenses in South Africa at 17, so I'd already had my car license and everything by that stage.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I did that in phase 2 and then went up and did all the C plus C,
yep.
And all that good stuff. That's pretty cool to know that we had a very similar kind of entrance.
Yeah, we could have even bumped into each other without knowing it.
Yeah. Do you have any stories from basic? Anything that stands out from that? It's okay if you don't, but...
No, not really. I know that I got very fit. We had 3 corporals. My section commander was a AGC corporal, but the other 2 sections, one had an RMP, and the other one had a fusilier, and he was I remember his name, Corporal Burke, and he was only sort of 5 foot something, but he was dynamite. He was very funny. Some of the expressions he came out with as a new squaddy, I was listening to what he would say, and he had a very famous saying. He always used to call us glue sniffers, and I just cracked myself laughing. Even when you're being told to leopard crawl over mud and stuff, and he'd bring out the DS hand and glue sniffers, and you guys need to get a grip of your lives. And I was just learning all of this stuff at the time. It was very influential in my military career, and he was someone that stood out quite a lot. As for main stories, the biggest one that probably stands out is the final exercise in basic training. I'd seen proper snow for the first time while we were on exercise. It wasn't fun. I didn't like it.
No?
I grew very hateful for snow straight away, until a couple of years later when we went adventure training and learned skiing and snowboarding. But that's a story for later. But seeing snow for the first time, that was something special. It was really good when it started, and then, like I say, after a while it got a bit boring again.
So I'm guessing to you that would have been maybe a myth.
Yes,
as you're growing up in South Africa.
Definitely. I think my mom said we had snow in South Africa while I was growing up probably once, and it was more what we would call here in the UK a bit of a snow flurry. None of the snow settled. There was a bit of ice in the air. It floated down to the ground, melted. That lasted for about 10 minutes, and that was it. That was snow for me. It was something totally alien for me.
And I suppose the last part in regards to training, do you have any advice for maybe people that are thinking about joining the military or that are going to go through what we went through?
Yeah, I would definitely say get yourself some decent running shoes and do as much fitness as you can, because the last thing you want to be doing, is pitching up and not being fighting fit, as we call it. You want to be ready so that it's just something else you don't have to worry about. There's enough stresses, and there's a lot of things that the army want to teach you, or the military in general. They want to teach you certain things in basic training, and if your fitness isn't up to scratch, and you've still got to try and get fit as well as learning how to polish your boots correctly, room inspections and stuff like that, it's just one thing that you don't have to worry about. So I would definitely concentrate heavily on fitness. With that, you also pick up less injuries if you're fit and strong. There's less likely a chance that you're going to get injured in basic training.
Yeah, good shout. That's some good advice there. All right, so you've done all your training.
Yep.
And then you head to your first unit.
Yeah.
Where is it? What did you do?
Again, I've been very, very fortunate in the military to have really good postings. Now, 657 Squadron, which is now disbanded, unfortunately, but at the time, it was the Joint Special Forces Aviation Wing, and you don't get into 657 without having been to what they call the Green Army first, because it's a very specialized, very specific area of expertise that the guys have to adhere to, all sorts of rules. You're working with some serious operators and stuff, supporting, don't get me wrong, none of us thought we were, anything special, but we got to do a lot of things that the normal Green Army didn't get to do. We got to go to places where the other guys weren't able to go, and it was very strange to be able to go there straight through basic training. But they picked the 3 South Africans in the squadron where I was to go to that basic training, to go to that unit straight out of basic, which was quite special. So from hitting the ground after basic training, we were in a very elite squadron, doing a lot of things that none of us will ever forget.
Where is that?
Oh, sorry. It's RAF Odium.
Oh, it's Odium. Okay.
We work alongside the 7 Squadron, which is the RAF Special Forces unit, support unit. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how long was you there for as a first unit?
I think I was there for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And then got to go to Germany.
After that one?
That's right, yes. I was told in basic training, you'll never get to Germany. They're bringing it back to the UK. They're closing it down. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to put in for the posting order and I'll try and go. When I went to 657, I was ground crew. And then went to Germany, but they didn't have many ground crew positions open. However, they did have a storeman position open. And I thought, you know what, going to the stores isn't a bad thing. If we go on exercises, normally the store guys go first to set everything up so that when the squadron come in, they're ready to hit the ground running. And I thought, you know what, that'll be nice. And I went to, RAF Bruggen, which is on the border of Holland and Germany.
Yeah.
Brilliant place for me because my wife and I would go across the border, which was literally 2 minutes drive from the front gate, into Holland, speak to the Dutch people, and they would sort of look at me going, "We understand what you're saying, but your accent is horrendous." I would tell them that I'm a South African, and then suddenly that was it. It was nobody cared about accents anymore, and on we went. So Germany was really, really good posting for me. Loved Germany.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Did you go on tour from either of those?
No. Actually, yes, I lie. When I was in 657, for the first time, because I was fortunate to go twice, I went to Iraq on 2 different occasions, very shortly after my daughter was born, which would be in 2005. I went to Belize slightly before that to do some jungle training and things like that, and then out to Iraq for the first time, which was amazing. I absolutely loved it.
So that was both in the first...
In the first squadron, yeah.
Wow, so
yeah.
even before you get to Germany...
Before I went to Germany, I'd been to Norway, Belize, Iraq. That was
Wow.
the 3 places that I went straight as a brand new soldier, which was again that's what the squadron do. We had to be ready for any sort of, how do I say it? You had to be ready to go into the Arctic, or the jungle, or normal temperate weather, or the desert. You had to be those 4 different sort of what do you say? I'm losing my mind. Climates, sort of things,
yeah.
and those sort of those areas of expertise. We had to train in every one of those, because at 24 hours notice from the time that your phone rang, you had to be ready to be able to be deployed into one of those areas. So as a new soldier, I got top-notch quality training from the word go, which was great.
And that's because special force type...
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
At any time, they could be called into any sort of environment, and we would have to be ready for that, ready to be packed. So I had 4... when I went to Iraq, the American PX were selling gorilla boxes, big plastic things, and I bought 4 of them so that I could make sure that my jungle kit was in one, my normal terrain stuff was in another, my desert kit was in the third, and then my Arctic stuff in the fourth. So if they said to me, "You've got half an hour to go and get your stuff," I'd be able to get in, grab the box, and I could be ready to go.
Clever.
So, yeah.
Clever. So being brand new and having that kind of, I suppose, I wouldn't say pressure, but you had that mentality of, right, if the phone goes, I've got to be ready.
Yep.
Did you like that? Was that something you signed up for as such?
Indeed.
Yeah?
Yes, definitely. The fact that we were, I hate to say this, but almost treated more like adults, because we knew that at any time if something went wrong, we would be to blame and that serious consequences would be had. So we were sort of left alone to our devices, to the point where we would be able to be left and be able to carry out a job without having people sort of really look over your shoulders too much. Again, away from the normal Green Army, where you've get your corporals always looking over your shoulders, and the sergeants and the staff sergeants always going, "Why are you doing that? What are you doing that for?" Whereas we were sort of given a job or a task, and we would be left to it because we knew the consequences if it wasn't carried out 100% correctly. So yeah, it was awesome.
Impressive. I mean, the fact that that's your first unit is incredible.
Yeah.
But if it's okay, I'd love to just ask a bit more about Belize, because during my time, I never actually went there and did training. I went there for scuba diving. So
nice. Adventure training,
adventure training. I've been there. I've been to St. George's Key.
Nice.
I've seen Belize. I think it's awesome.
Yep.
But I never did the training. I only saw what the soldiers were training from the outside looking in.
Okay, right.
So for someone that actually went through that jungle training,
could
you share something about it?
Yeah, when we got to Belize, for some reason the sergeant major was quite a fitness freak, and I ended up having to do a PFA in Belize. Now, the humidity there is horrendous. You'll get out the shower in the morning, and before you've gone from the shower block to your accommodation, you are soaked piss wet through with sweat. It's just, even in South Africa, I'm not used to that sort of humidity and heat. So running was quite a task. It was an effort. That was just coming into the country, basically. That's what we started doing to acclimatize. Then they took us into the jungle, and we did I think it was a week-long sort of introduction to jungle training and that sort of stuff. They teach you to slaughter a pig, pluck a chicken, kill chickens, prepare the food. It's the first time we were sort of brought into the way of cooking food in a hole in the ground. I believe a lot of the Fijians call it a lovo. I don't know what the people in Belize called it, but it is a similar sort of idea where you have the rocks in the ground that have been baking with a fire, wrap your food in a banana leaf, and so you take the pork that you've just killed, chuck it in a banana leaf, chuck it in the ground, and let it cook for hours, while we were then learning about what sort of foods you can eat that are grown in the jungle normally, naturally, learning about wet and dry drills. And I know I've been listening to a lot of Ant Middleton podcasts and Jason Fox stuff, and they're talking about, the wet and dry drill is you're in your hammock, you've had your river crossing through the water to get to where you're camping, and your kit's obviously wet, soaked. You need to get out of that kit and into your dry kit for the evening so that you can sleep properly, try and dry out your wet kit. But in the jungle, like I say, that it just never ever dries properly. So you go to sleep comfortably, as comfortably as you can in a hammock with insects all over the place. And then in the morning, you fear, you dread that getting into your cold, wet uniform. It takes a lot of discipline, and there were a lot of people that didn't adhere to that, and they stayed in their dry kit. And the directing staff, we call them DS, were noticing this, and they said, "We'll show you why you need to do the wet and dry drills." So after most of the people had got dressed and had their food, they would take us through a river crossing straight away. So it doesn't matter that you're in wet kit. But for the guys that stayed in their dry kit, both sets of their kit now was wet, and it was very uncomfortable for them to sleep. You start picking up things. It's the only place, as far as I can remember, in the British military army that you are told not to shave. Not only are you encouraged not to, but you're actually told not to, because if you pick up an infection within minutes and days, you will be man down with infections and sickness, and you become a casualty to your squadron.
Yeah.
So the level of learning what you can and can't do and what you should and shouldn't do in the jungle. I then learned that the jungle is an extremely harsh environment, and the plants and animals just want to kill or eat you.
Really?
So, you need to be on your toes all the time. To the point where we called it the bastard vine. There's a vine probably about as wide, as thick as a golf ball sort of thing. And a lot of people, when you're walking in the jungle, you slip. And the first thing you try and do is grab onto something. And the thorns on this thing were probably about 2.5 inches, and they're like needles. And if you grab onto this, they go straight through your hand. It was awful. And they snap off in your skin, which then cause infections. So, a couple of people grabbed onto one of these, but, you very, very quickly learn not to do that again. You just rather fall to the floor and pick yourself up and carry on from there.
What kind of gear do you wear? Do you wear gloves, even though it's hot?
We did wear gloves. We were all in the jungle kit, which is, again, made for that environment. It's a lighter kit. Physically, the material's a little bit more breathable because you're perspiring and you're wet all the time. We had gloves. We then also had jungle boots, which were different to the normal boots because they, again, were lighter. But the main thing with those were the sole of the boot had a metal plate that was built in so that, again, if you step on a spike or a nail or these thorns, that it wouldn't go through into your foot because, again, you've got enough problems with trench foot, with your wet-dry routines, trying to keep your feet dry, having to powder them literally every time you stop. You take your boots off, you check your feet, you check your oppo's feet, your guys in your squadron, just to make sure that people aren't lacking in their personal admin. But yeah, the kit is totally different.
Yeah.
And again, different terrains, different environments will have different kit for different reasons.
Of course,
So,
yeah. I mean, I didn't know about the plate in the boots.
Yeah.
I just thought they looked cooler.
They were really cool. They also had a lot more grip, so the grip was cut out quite sort of thick lines. And I just thought, it's obviously somebody else has made the boot. It's a different boot, so they make a different design. Until we were sitting down and they said, right, your boots will do this and this and this for you. It also had little holes in the side.
Yeah.
When you walk through the water, it then gets all that water out so that your feet can dry quicker.
And they're thinner, aren't they?
They are thinner. They're more flexible. That's right. Yeah.
Hug your foot.
Yeah.
So I've seen them, I just didn't know about the plate.
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah. It was really
sense.
cool. Very uncomfortable. They were horrendous boots, but they served their purpose in that terrain.
Yeah.
You wouldn't wear them in the desert. Your feet would cook.
So before we finish with Belize, because I'm fascinated by it, is there one story or experience that stood out from your time there? Because was that, like, before you mentioned that, how long was that? That time there, was it like a 3-month trip?
Wow, no. I think, well, that's a funny story. Again, we started off with a normal deployment because we were trying to. They split the squadron in two, so that there's a squadron back in the UK and a squadron on exercise, and then they'd sort of relieve us after. I think we were there for 2 months, or supposed to be there for 2 months. Ended up being there 3 months, to the point where. I had to go and speak to the sergeant major and say, I've got family coming from South Africa. My daughter's only 6 weeks old. When we left, they're coming to see my daughter for the first time. I was told we're going to be home this time. And then now we're having to stay a month later because the RAF, in their wonderful ways of flying, as I found out later through the military, this was my first experience with them. Their Hercules broke down, but not just anywhere, in Las Vegas. Oh, it was terrible. On the way to come and relieve us with the squadron, with the rest of the squadron in there. So I ended up being there a lot longer than normal, which again, on to the next point where you asked where the best experience was then just that, because we had a bit more time on our hands. I was introduced to helicopter abseiling.
Oh, nice.
In Belize, and it was absolutely amazing.
Talk us through it. I've never done it.
We got trained how to abseil, where to hold the ropes, what equipment to do, and when we started off abseiling, they took us to about 200 feet in the air, and we just abseiled with 4 people standing on the skids, and the helicopter abseiling instructor / door gunner type person would then send the diagonal guys across the way from each other, because if you went out with a guy that was directly opposite, if you jumped out and swung, you would knock into each other underneath the downdraft of the blades. So if you were diagonally across from each other, there's no ways you'd pass each other that way. We are taught how to do that on the words of command, how far to go, and then the helicopter instructor would say, just hold on there. If he saw there was a problem, and you'd have to lock off so that you could then concentrate on what he was saying without falling out the helicopter. And the instructor was messing around with myself. You get to where they call the point of no return. So you're standing on the skid, and you go to just before 90 degrees, or sort of parallel to the ground, basically. And from there's no ways you can pick yourself back up. So they call that the point of no return. You then have to go down. And he held me there without letting me lock off for about what felt like forever, probably about 30 seconds, just to see if I had the sort of upper body strength to hold on. And eventually he saw that I was really struggling, and he just said, look, just go. And then, they tell you to go into the cross formation, which you put your arms out and your legs straight. Basically, you're not coming straight down. You're sort of coming at a vertical angle of about 45 degrees, because of the way that the string or the rope lies, your heli abseiling rope. And at the bottom, then you've got your brakeman, which will then, if he sees that you're losing control, descending too quickly, or that there's a problem, basically he brakes and it pulls the rope out of your hand and automatically locks you in so that you don't go anywhere, so that you're not going to fall to your death, basically. We did those without any kit on for a couple of times, and then they took us with our Bergens. They show you how to put your Bergen on so that it's not going to be in your way, doesn't catch up in the rope. We went to, I think it was 280 feet, and they then show you how to do that out of the aircraft safely. And I must say that was probably the main highlight of Belize for me, other than the adventure training part. But again, that's a different story.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. So, before you leave to go to Germany for your second posting,
yep.
You mentioned Iraq. Was that a short tour?
No. Well, yes. Because we had, again, they split the squadron into 3, so that you've got your one part of the squadron in Iraq busy doing the job. You've got a second part of the squadron which are preparing to relieve the first side, and then you've got the squadron that will be sort of rear deployment sort of things, making sure that if anything is needed in Iraq, they can get things out there. That was the first way that it worked. And then once your first squadron had been, they would come back and they would then be ready in the UK to then send out their equipment. So it was a rotating squadron all the way through, and we did that for about 2 years. I ended up going to Iraq twice on a sort of 6 to 8 week program. So it was shorter deployments, but quite intensive. So the squadron OC sought fit to rather do shorter deployments more often than having the people out there be there for too long and start letting accidents happen and stuff like that. Because again, that's where people's lives come into play. So yeah.
And so you went out there. Was that ground crew?
I was ground crew. So with going out to Iraq, we would have our refueling, rearming personnel, which were all of us basically, because we all knew that all of the people that were there could do all the jobs at once. So the squadron would rearm, refuel, drag the helicopters out because they were on skids, and we would put them into the hangars. We have a heli lift, which is basically like for lack of a better word, like a big forklift with clamps. And you would position this unit around the skids, clamp the helicopter on hydraulic lift the helicopter just enough to be able to move it out, and your crew would be around you making sure you don't strike the blades and damage the aircraft. We would pull the aircraft out, have it ready for the aircrew when they get called out for whatever operations they needed to at the time, to support the SAS. And that was pretty much, you'd rotate through being a radio operator, a ground crew, and then just helping and being around for whatever jobs needed.
Nice. Was that Basra?
That was not Basra. I don't know. I had to sign a confidentiality thing, so I don't know if I can still say where we were, but we were north. Not Basra.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. No, that
only because of
sense.
Special Forces type of stuff. So
that's fair. So then, fast forward a little bit. You've now been posted to Germany.
To Germany for the first time.
First time. Yeah. You find it awesome because you're on the border of
Holland.
And so, from your time there, first of all, like, how long was you there, and did you go to any deployments or exercises from there?
Again, a funny story. Got there as a new air trooper at the time still, and it was a very small squadron. It was a VIP Gazelle squadron, so we only had 3 Gazelles, which would do sort of the brigadier, colonel, general sort of moving from Germany to places like The Hague. We would take them to Gütersloh, which is done later on, my second posting in Germany. But we would move the VIPs around in these helicopters. So as ground crew, we weren't, again, part of the normal Green Army. Because I was new there, they thought, you've just come out of 657, so you know quite a lot more than what we would have a normal soldier. They decided to send me to Poland on an exercise. I can't for the Askari Thunder was Kenya. Sorry, I don't remember what the exercise was called, but it was quite a big exercise. A lot of troop movements from the UK. We had all sorts of people there, and we were there as Kazivac role. Now, the problem came in. I was flying in from Germany as a British soldier to Poland on a South African passport. What could possibly go wrong? I didn't know who I was meeting. Because I was brand new in the squadron, I didn't know these people that I was meeting, but they were going to be at the airport to meet me. I also didn't know where I was going because I'm a South African and my general geography is rubbish at the best of times. So I wasn't really told.
Question on that.
Yeah.
So you were flying in on a
civilian aircraft. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I landed in the airport closest to Warsaw, and I was met by the what do you call it? It's a douane in Afrikaans, the customs officials. He says to me, "Oh, welcome. What are you doing here?" So I'm like, "Oh, I'm with the British military." So I pull out my South African passport with a British Army ID card. And already he started getting a bit twitchy, and he said, "Okay, what are you doing here?" So I'm like, "Well, I'm on a exercise with the British military. I believe it happens every year, and I'm here for, I think it's 4 weeks." And he said to me, "Okay, where are you going?" And I then obviously started panicking, and he was like, "You don't even know where you're going." So I said to him, "No, not really, because I've got people that are meeting me outside. They're waiting for me in the arrivals lounge. They will take me to where they need to go. I'm only a small soldier. I don't really know what's going on." And he said, "Okay, we've got a bit of a problem. It all looks a bit dodgy." So he called a couple of guys, and the next thing I know, there are 5 armed guards from Poland with their hands on their pistols escorting me to a interview area. It all came down to a 5-star general type person, someone high ranking in their military. I explained the story to him, and he said, all right, I'll go out with you, and if these people are there, I will find out from them where you're going. What you need to do is I will give you leave to go into Poland, but when you come out to go back home, you get the people to phone this number, and I will come and see that you get on the aircraft and go home. And it's like, wow, I was bricking it. I didn't know what the hell was going on. He came out with me. The people were waiting there, and they explained to him what we were doing. So my first deployment to Germany, which then ended up in an exercise in Poland, became a mission bigger than Ben-Hur. It was not a great start to being in the squadron. The exercise itself was amazing. It was really good. I learned a lot. First time in Poland, so it was just brilliant from the word go. Learned a lot of things. Yeah, a lot of things. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. There's a lot of these funny little stories that don't always end up starting off well.
Because I never knew they would fly us from part of Germany over, because when I was stationed in Germany and we had a exercise to Poland, I actually missed out on all of them, which is weird.
Okay.
But all of the guys would drive vehicles.
Yes.
Because we were close enough.
Yep.
So I didn't know they did that.
I think because I was the only one in the squadron, because I was slightly later than what the exercises started, which is why I would have normally done exactly what you've just said, driven up on a convoy or flown up in the helicopters. But because I was slightly later, they then saw fit to put me on a civilian aircraft, which ended up really well.
Wow. So from your time in that posting, was there any other deployments, exercises that really stand out? Because from the sounds of it, you have a lot of little things.
There's a lot of very busy times in my life. No, as far as that posting to Germany, no, that was the highlight. The only other thing that I can draw from that was I then got promoted to Lance Corporal very shortly after that exercise, which turned out really well for me. I was promoted, I think, within 4 years of joining the military, which in the Army Air Corps especially is not heard of really, because you're still very green. But I think because I was older than most people, I had a lot of life experience, should we say. They then saw fit to promote me, and with being promoted, I then got pushed back to the UK, fortunately enough, again to 657 Squadron. To then try and I was then posted to 657 to become a MT corporal. So that was back to 657, which was, I had all my qualifications, I had all my clearances, your SC clearances. I knew how the squadron worked, so it was really good.
Nice. So at this time, how long had you been in the army? So you said 4 years. So you then got promoted.
Yes, I think.
And then was it literally as soon as you got promoted, 4 years in, you then went back to, is it Odium?
Yes, Odium, yeah. I think it wasn't very long after promotion. So I was, if I say, it was probably the 5-year mark. Then I got put back to Odium, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then was there more little trips away like you had from the first time?
Yes. In Odium the second time, as an MT corporal, I was then put in charge of going to Oman and organising the transport for all of the operatives out there. So it was all of the Land Rovers, the trucks, the stores and sort of stuff, because I just come from a stores background. I had quite a big responsibility, and I was pushed out as part of the forward operating crew to go and get Oman set up for that. Oman was nice. I don't think I'd go there on a holiday, but as part of the military, it was an experience. Very, very good. My first sort of proper desert experience, actually, before. I'd already been to Iraq, but a different desert without being in a conflict zone, should I say.
Yeah.
nice to be able to drive around the sand dunes and stuff and enjoy it instead of fearing for your life, pretty much.
Which part of Oman? Because I was in Oman in 2001.
Yes.
So are you down south?
Not too far from Salalah. So we were based in Salalah, and then I can't remember what the coastal town was, where we would have to drive between Salalah and the port, where our stores and the boats from Gosport would come in with the vehicles and stuff like that.
Okay, because we were stationed at Thumb Rate.
Oh, Thumb Rate, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Thumb Rate is where we were based in Salalah. Was the port town? That's right. Yes.
Cool. Yeah, because
Thumb Rate was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Really nice little place.
I think wasn't that their Air Force?
The Air Force base.
Yeah.
Because with that deployment, I was tasked to go and help the Omani Special Forces with Headley abseiling. Funny enough, and on going up there, somebody had hit a camel on the road. Now you know that their camel are like gold to them, so there was a big dispute and we sort of drove past very quickly but safely, and got to where we were training the Omanis, and we did all their training, and then they invited us into the mess, and I turned to the sergeant, who I know was my sergeant. Suddenly I saw he had a captain rank on his chest, and I was like, where did you get that from? And he goes, here's yours. We're going into the officers' mess. Don't say anything. And I just thought, wow, okay. So, because they said you don't want to go into the ordinary ranked mess. It was pretty bad.
Wow.
So the meal that was put before us was fantastic, just amazing. We had camel, and we were only told it was camel after we'd finished eating. And it was just like beef. It was absolutely great. It was lovely. So yes, Oman had different challenges, shall we say. Being handed a captain rank to go into the mess was good. Learning to work with the Omani Special Forces, teaching them, and being treated like royalty while we were out there was just a new experience altogether.
So you were a captain for a period of time.
for a very short period of time. Field promotion, I believe, is what they call that.
Two things stand out in fact, three things stand out for Oman for me. I don't know if you remember this. I think there was only one main road that went from Thumb Rate to
I know where you're going with this.
and you had to go. It was called the Jebel.
That's the one.
Yeah. And it literally went up into the clouds. It was such a high.
Yeah.
And it was green.
Yep.
You got to the top.
And it was absolutely green. It was like it was like a golf course up there.
Yeah.
The grass was beautiful. The trees were growing. And it was as if you were driving through a different world.
Really. Yeah. And then you came down, and it was so steep that the trucks we were driving
started burning clutches. Yeah. We had that. Now, fortunately for you, you might have only been in a crane and stuff like that. We've got 5,500 litres of aviation fuel behind us. You do not want to have an accident with one of those. So, it was challenging, shall we say.
Yeah. Well, because one of the guys that was driving the truck at the time, the trailer, we were I think it was a low loader. The trailer started to overtake. Jackknife.
Yeah.
And he did well. He handled it, got to the bottom. We literally pulled over. He had to have a cigarette, calm himself down.
I can imagine.
Jeez. So the Jebel was absolutely...
That was an epic trip just to do it in a Land Rover. So, again, I don't wish that sort of thing on my worst enemy now.
And I also remember seeing civilian coaches drive past with the back open because it's just too hot.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that.
Yes, not a lot, no.
Like the engine bay.
The engine bay was wide open. Most of the time we saw them, they'd just taken the engine door off.
They'd taken it off.
There was no need for it. It was, like you said, it was plus 40 degrees out there at the best of times.
Yeah.
And, it was just no point having them. We weren't on the road a lot. We were on the ranges quite often, which is a really good story there as well.
Go for it, man.
Where the Omani, I think he was the Prime Minister, the main guy of Oman. Sultan of Oman, sorry. downgraded him there. He'd be well impressed with that. He would stand on the platform watching the firing of the military going on, and we took over this for the period of our exercise there. And I was on the radio, and the SF snipers had got into the back of the helicopters, and they were doing their range training, and we'd set up certain targets all over abandoned cars and oil drums and all sorts of things, and we were on a mound which is quite high, and we were sort of overlooking the whole sort of range to make sure that we were part of the safety team. And as we were standing there, the Lynx helicopters came with their blades level to where we were standing, within meters away from where we were standing. We saw these two helicopters just slide through the small valley, and then turn with their noses towards each other, and the snipers, obviously giving the snipers range to shoot forward and hit their targets as they were training. That was, again, something out of this world, and we were doing that in the daytime and at the night. And then the ground forces that were there with us were shooting the MGM, the machine gun grenade launcher. And we didn't see them shooting, we heard them, and we saw the explosions of all the aftermath that happened, and just a totally new experience again.
Wow.
Epic. Absolutely epic.
That sounds epic.
Yeah.
That sounds epic.
Yeah, we had some really cool adventures. Really
Nice.
good stuff.
And I suppose the third thing that really stood out for me, I don't know if you experienced this, but was sandstorms in Oman. Did you ever have a sandstorm?
If we did, it was more of a very short-lived one, because I know that the sandstorms are pretty harsh.
Yeah.
That red sand literally gets in everywhere. We had a very small one.
Okay.
I think the time of year that we went, we were very fortunate not to sort of be a part of the main thing. It sounds horrendous.
Yeah, it was, but we won't go into it. But basically, you could see it coming on the horizon, and you had to take cover.
Yeah,
basically.
But I was told it's like a red wall of just sand that comes your way, and there's no way you can do anything about it. You just cover up and wish for the best.
But interesting. Obviously there's a lot of
similarity times when we were in the military.
Because I went in 2001, so for you that would have been
2006 or 7 or something like that. Yeah.
So even though that's 5 years or so apart, it's still very similar.
Still, I don't think anything's changed even now. I don't think it's a country that doesn't really look like they're into forward progression with a lot of stuff. No.
So you've done Oman. Then do you get posted away from 657?
Again, there's a bit of a backstory to that. I started off at 657, the second posting, as the MT corporal. But because I wanted to be a pilot, as I told you in the beginning, I then started going through my pilot training, pilot medical type stuff, where I was told that I was, in the medical by the doctor, I was too fat, too tall, and too old. Where the too tall part comes in is they send you to, I think it's RF Cranwell, where they have very specific measurements where you will be too tall in the aircraft, sitting down, but when you stand, you're fine. So my problem is my thigh is too long. My femur muscle bones are too long. When I sit down, the cockpit would be within inches from my knees, and if the helicopter went down, the dashboard would take off my legs. So that would be the safety thing. So that's why I was too tall, and it was a gut shot learning that after 7 years of being in the military, and the one thing that I joined the Army Air Corps to. The main thing was to become a helicopter pilot. They then said, you can't be a pilot, and the doctor saw straight away that I felt dead inside, and he said to me, "Look, you don't have to be a pilot to fly in the Army Air Corps." And immediately there was a bit of a twinkle in my eye, and I said to him, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Have you thought of becoming a crewman?" And I thought, I'd been working with these people for so long, it had never occurred to me that I could be part of that, because I was concentrating on being a pilot. And he said to me, crewmen normally have a lot more fun because they get to shoot the big machine guns in the back. They are part of the crew. You're still flying without the massive responsibility of being in control of that aircraft. And I thought, you know what, that's I'm going to do this. I'm going to give that a go. So in 657, I then put in my paperwork, spoke to the door gunners, found out a little bit more about exactly what they do, because I'd worked with them, but I hadn't actually asked them, we only see certain things as ground crew. So I got a bit more information, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. And the air crew heard that I wasn't going to be a pilot, and they really felt for me, because I'd asked questions. I'd started learning about time, distance, speed calculations, and they saw that I was gutted, but they wanted to try and do as much as they could to get me air crew. Got me into the I think it was a 6-month course at the time. It was a very new course for the crewmen, where we would not just be door gunners, but we were actually air crew, part of the 3 crew concept, where we were given a lot more responsibility, like a bit of map reading, watching fuel, making sure that the air crew are, when they are not, when their capacity is at maximum, where a new pilot will be flying and he's watching instruments and he's trying to go where the commander is telling him, we can take off a bit of that responsibility from him. So we will say, right, I've got, T's and P's, your temperatures and pressures for your oils and your gearboxes and your fuel levels and stuff. So he's got a little bit more capacity to be able to get to where he needs to be. So as aircrew, that then started. I did the course, learnt a lot, got through my shooting qualifications quite quickly, because I love weapons. In the army, we can still call them weapons because they are there for defense and killing people. In Civvy Street, we call them firearms, because I'm now going through licenses and stuff. But with the crewman stuff, I then qualified as a crewman, got my brevet, the wing on the side. We were allowed to then wear that. And in my training course, I was working with some of the new pilots that they'd been on a 1.5-year course, and then at the last 6 months, they then get paired up with the training door gunners so that they start getting into the 3 crew concept. And at the time, it was Major Goth, who then became my squadron OC. When we were training, I'd explained to him, I was in 657 and I was becoming a door gunner there, but I think it was 2 weeks before we qualified as full air crew. The sergeant major in 657 at the time, I'm not going to name his name, but he must have had pressure from the Joint Special Forces Aviation Wing not to homebrew gunners. So although I was part of the squadron already, I know how the squadron works, they wanted to bring in new blood, basically. And I was to be made an example of not homebrewing the gunners. So I then wasn't able to go back to 657 as a crewman, which again, the air crew were gutted, because I know the system, I know how they work, I know the people that are there, I know the way that 657 work. And it was a big blow, and without saying anything, Major Goth then saw that there was a bit of an issue, and he called me aside. He said, "What's going on? You're not on top form." And I said, "Well, I was supposed to go back to 657 as crewman, learn all about the way that they do things, but I'm being made an example of by not being able to go back as aircrew, so I don't know where I'm going." And Major Goth then said, "Look, I'm the new OC for 661 squadron in Germany, one of 2 squadrons. The other one was 652. And he said, I'm the new OC there. I can pull some strings if you want to come to Germany. And I then spoke to my wife, and I said to her, look, I'm not able to go to 57. I've been offered Germany again. Would you like to go? And she said, yes. We enjoyed Germany the first time, although it'll be a different part. This time we went to Gütersloh. So the next day I said, we would love to come, sir. I don't know how quickly you can make it happen. within half an hour he said, "Get your wife to start packing your bags. You're coming to Germany." And that was our second posting to Germany, and that brought on a whole new array of adventures.
Wow.
Yeah. So very good postings for myself. I've always been very fortunate to have really good postings, right place, right time, right people. So
it sounds it. Really does. So 661 Gütersloh.
That's right.
That's how we Brits say it. Gütersloh.
That's right. Yeah.
It's probably not pronounced that way.
No, I think that the Germans say Gütersloh.
That sounds right.
So again, because when we went to Germany the second time, I thought I'd make a little bit more of an effort to learn basic phrases in Germany just to get by, because I was told that the Germans in Gütersloh are very, very, very German, if I can say that, without being horrible. They are still used to, very much like the French. If you speak English to the French, you don't exist. They will ignore you. You can die on the side of the road. They will not look at you. Fortunate for me, I learned a bit of German, and I also spoke Afrikaans as my first language. So if I needed something, I would try in German. If they looked at me strange, I knew I wasn't getting through to them, so I would try in Afrikaans. And then they knew I wasn't just trying to be arrogant or trying to get them to speak English. And then I would ask them in German, sprechen Sie English, which is one of the horrendous phrases I learned. Probably not said right, I apologize for that. But they would then look at it and go, "You've tried two different languages, let's try and find one that we can accommodate each other." And spent a little bit more time and enjoyed Germany the second time even more than the first.
Yeah, because Gütersloh is more central.
Central to Germany, Düsseldorf wasn't too far. I used to have to go there quite often to pick people up. Cologne isn't too far.
Yeah.
We were nicely in the center of Germany, really.
Yeah, because my second one's Paderborn.
Oh, so. Unfortunate. Yeah, I didn't frequent Paderborn as much. I did do my skill at arms in Sennerlager though. Yeah. So we don't talk about that. Yeah. That was foul.
All right. Well, we don't have to. We don't have to bring the bad stuff.
No. No, I mean, it was actually okay. Just because I was aircrew, they thought, "Oh, we'll give you for your final teaching scenario, lesson 6 and 7 stoppages for GPMG, which are compounded stoppages."
Oh dear.
The hardest lessons you can.
Yeah.
And I got through them, fortunately, but not great stories there.
So being 661, being in Germany in that area, you're now a
corporal.
Corporal. So
I got promoted in 657 Squadron just before I became just after I became aircrew. Yeah. In fact, because you had to be a lance corporal to start your course, and then not long afterwards I was promoted, which again was quite quick because that was my 7th or 8th year in the military, and again, the promotion is very slow, but because I was aircrew, I needed a bit more responsibility, so they gave me the second stripe, which unfortunately was the last rank that I obtained, because the progression in the aircrew is so strict. You literally have to wait for someone either to promote or leave the corps, or even worse, pass away for whatever reason, which unfortunately did happen. So I was quite stagnant from there. I'd spent the next sort of 6-7 years just as a corporal.
Okay.
Got to the highest sort of level in the corporal rank, pay rise. So,
So how long was you in Gütersloh for?
I was there for 3 years.
3 years?
3.5 years, I think it was, yeah.
Was there any trips away there, like exercises?
Many,
or?
Yeah, very, very good ones. So in preparation for Afghanistan, we went to El Centro in California.
Did you?
To where the Blue Eagles, which is where our Red Arrows sort of came from, as far as I believe. They're the Navy version of the Red Arrows. So they fly around in their fighter jets and do their displays and stuff. I was introduced to the 50 caliber machine gun, the M3M Mark 1, when we were out there, which was something to behold. I must be honest, it was quite a heavy machine gun just off its tripod. We had to carry these things around, sign them in and out of the armories and stuff. Firing them caused the helicopter to move in the opposite direction. That's the sort of power behind this thing. So we would have to be taught on the range certain words of command to be able to tell the pilot just before we shoot, so that they can put in corrections to be able to stop the aircraft from moving backwards or moving off target while we were shooting. Wow. So we would say 3, 2, 1, firing now, and as we then pull the trigger, you feel the aircraft leaning into the shot, basically, because otherwise it would twist the nose of the aircraft away. The velocity and the power of this M3M, and we got to do some fantastic shooting out there on massive open ranges. Pretty much, what the Americans are like. They're all gun-ho. Yeah, just shoot shit up, basically. And we took it literally. We just went crazy. Now, there's some of the objects that we will not discuss what we were shooting at, but it was in preparation for Afghanistan. So, you know, take it from what you might. A lot learnt. Because you're flying with a heavy machine gun, you can reach further distances, and your fall of shot, then depending on what rounds, we were only shooting tracer and ball, but when we got to Afghanistan we were shooting 1 in 4, so it's your tracer, then your ball round, then your high explosive incendiary round, and then back to just a armor piercing, and then that would be 1 in every 4 shots would be one of those rounds. So yeah, pretty ninja.
That is crazy, because I was trained on the 50 cal as well.
Yep.
But on a Land Rover.
Oh, okay.
Or Wimmick, actually.
Wimmick, yeah.
It was on a Wimmick. I was trained by one para down in Dover before going to Afghan.
I'm sorry about that.
But
no.
But I didn't even think about it in a helicopter. So that's crazy.
El Centro and California was where we started shooting this. Just before I went out to Afghanistan, the squadron before us, 652 Squadron, if I'm not mistaken, were trialling twin firing 50 cals. So they would have one on the left and the right side of the aircraft. What you've got is behind where the pilots sit in their armored seats would be the magazine for the ammunition, and we could fit 1,200 rounds in the 2 magazines, 600 into each. That's then belt fed into your 50 cal, and with them splitting it, they were able to then have 600 rounds each. But there were all different ways of having to shoot, because you have to have the 2 door gunners, which was very strange. You only have normally 1. The Lynx is only a small aircraft. You've now got 2 door gunners and your 2 pilots with all this ammunition and its extra weight. They have to learn how to shoot in unison, basically.
Wow.
I didn't get to do that. I only saw pictures of it, which looked just out of this world. It was never seen before, basically, in the British Army. But when we got out there, they had so many problems with the fitting of the actual the 50 caliber on the aircraft. It was pulling the frame apart, for lack of better words. So they went back to single firing, where you've got 1 gun with 1,200 rounds in the magazine. It's more controlled, for lack of better explanation, really.
And that was a Lynx.
That was in the Lynx. We were flying the Lynx Mark 9. So the Mark 7 was the one with the skids. The Mark 9 was the one with what we called wheelie bin tires. It had the 2 tires at the back and the one in the front to be able to steer. And with that, there was better engines. They had the 9 Alpha is the Wildcat engines before the Wildcat became part of normal day use. You won't find any of the Lynx other than the Wildcat now. They've all been retired, which is a sad day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So what year did you go out to Afghan?
That was in 2011.
So what?
I can't remember what Herrick tour that
Can't
was.
remember what Herrick.
No, I never really paid much attention to it. All I knew was I'm going to Afghan from this time to about this time.
Yeah.
Flexible.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Being Army Air Corps, is that still a 6-month tour, or are they shorter?
We did. I think I was there for 4 or 5 months, something like that. So it was slightly shorter than the normal tour.
Yeah.
Again, quicker rotations. And I only went out once because 652 were there before us. We took over from them. They had a couple of months break, reset, reorg, and then they came back in to take over from us again.
That's Helmand, I guess.
Yes.
And the reason I asked that is because I never did Helmand.
Oh, okay. Basra was not Basra.
It was Kabul that I went to.
Did you go Kabul? Right. Okay.
So I was in some of the first operations out in Afghanistan.
Yeah. So you were forward with the infantry type
yeah, I
guys,
guess so. Well, in fact, it was a different operation.
Wow.
It was called Opfingal.
Okay. Okay.
And Herrick was obviously south.
Was the later? Yeah. Okay.
So I never got to see what you got to see.
Yeah.
Because Kabul being the capital of Afghan, it's buildings and still mountainous. So,
if I'm not mistaken, I think that's close to what we call the green zone. So the green zone is as it says, more populated. So the irrigation and the water systems are there. So that's where most part of the fighting was. Helmand area. That was all sort of out of the mountainous areas, but not too far from them.
Yeah.
So the Taliban were able to get into the mountains and stuff. And
I'm not sure I understand.
I'm terribly sorry. Siri decided to start commenting there. When I was out there, Prince Harry was there. So the Lynx deployment was on the left side of the hangars and the Apaches were on the right, and that was his first tour out in Afghanistan. And often we would come back from deployment and we'd see Prince Harry running towards the helicopters that were already starting up, obviously on their way to a mission. Quite often we would see that, and we would then be on standby to help out. Not that we could do much more than an Apache, but we could be a little bit closer and see if we could help. But
So I remember the interview we had. He was being interviewed on a TV show, and
that's right.
And then he had to rip his mic off.
Now that interview, he ran out while we came in. We'd landed, we'd put our covers on the aircraft, and then we saw him running out. And he was.
Yeah.
It was one of many occasions, but one of those specifically was just.
So you were there. You were behind that crew.
Yeah, because we saw then later on when they'd taken off and gone, the camera crew were filming him taking off in the Apache.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, my claim to fame. One of in Afghan. There's more. Yeah.
More?
Yeah.
Do you want, what, from Afghan?
From Afghan. Yeah.
So go for it, man.
We came into the tent, and Major Goth had then said to us in the morning brief that I was going to escort some VIP around our aircraft, and I was to make sure that there was ammunition in the belt, but far enough away from the machine gun that nothing would happen. As a weapons instructor, just make sure. And I was going to show her behind the 50 cal so that she could sit. Now, I didn't have a clue who this woman was. Her name escapes me now. I've got pictures of her. She was married. She was going out with some footballer. Cheryl Cole. That's who it is. I am so sorry.
There we go.
Sorry, Cheryl. I didn't know who this woman was. And Major Goth said to me, do you not listen to, what was the band? It wasn't Pussycat Dolls. It was whoever she was part of.
Oh, come on. I did. I can't remember.
Some girl band type thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, don't you listen to it? And I sort of turned around to him and I was like, so I don't know if you've ever heard, the Slipknot, Metallica, Slayer, Korn, Five Finger Death Punch that I listened to. Pussycat Dolls or whoever they were not really on the top of my list.
Little Mix. Is it Little Mix?
Could be.
Something like that.
But he said to me, "Oh, okay, doesn't matter. You just you're going to show someone around a VIP." And I thought, oh, okay. So, I got pictures with Cheryl Cole next to me in the helicopter. I've got a huge big smile on my face. I don't know why, because I didn't know who she was. But she was lovely. She was really nice, very friendly. And that's another claim to fame. So, later on we'll talk about Prince Harry and personal meetings with him in sports. So,
Yeah. And just for anybody that isn't aware, whilst we're out on these tours, we do get so-called famouses coming out to see us. And I suppose that's boost morale.
Massively,
just to make us feel connected to the real world, I guess.
I didn't meet him personally, but I know that Ross Kemp came out as well.
Yeah.
I saw him at the table next to me, but he was talking to other people, and I thought, you know what, I know more about him than what I did about Cheryl Cole.
Yeah.
But I knew that there would be more people wanting to chat to him, and he was already engaged in a conversation, and I had to go back and get ready for a task. So I thought, I'd seen him. I was close enough to from where you were sitting from me, and that's good enough for me. I'm happy. So there were a lot of celebrities that came out, and as soldiers in Afghanistan, you appreciate that sort of thing because it brings to light to normal civilian and the general populace that we are doing something in Afghanistan. It's a war zone. It's not a holiday, and these guys come out to support us, and it means a lot to the guys. It did definitely for myself.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even if you don't know who she is.
Indeed, when I went back that afternoon, I did a bit more research, and I can't remember her boyfriend at the time, but he was some famous footballer, and I just thought, wow, I was within half an arm's length away from this woman, and I was talking to her, and it was great. It was really good. Yeah.
He's called Ashley Cole, by the way.
Ashley Cole, that's the Badger. That's the one.
I think he played for Chelsea. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, I'm not a football fan. I wouldn't have a clue.
No,
sorry.
I know you're not.
Wrong shaped ball.
So you finish Afghanistan. You head back to Gütersloh.
Yeah.
And then do you get posted away from there?
No, before that, there's a even better story. This is probably one of the main peaks in my military career. When that was in 2011, so 2012 we had the London Olympics, which then our squadron was chosen to become part of the air support around London. So we flew to, I think it was Poole, got onto HMS Ocean, and sailed from Poole to Greenwich in the heart of London, and we then were based there for the whole of the Olympics as air support. And that was, just to be able to say I'm part of the air security team for the London Olympics 2012, highlight in my life. Very few people can say that they were flying in a Lynx at the top level of the London Eye, watching people go around and around.
Yeah.
And it was I'm being paid to do this.
Could you break that down? Because the only thing I did for the London Olympics was was to protect the torch going through Andover.
Oh wow, that's pretty awesome.
So I did the security for that.
You did the security, nice.
But talk about what I didn't even think about having air support. I mean, I think I knew about like snipers on rooftops and things like that, but I didn't know about having a HMS Ocean on the hut. That's cool. Love to hear about that.
Before the actual event, we had to do a lot of training. We had to get together with the RAF snipers, who we were carrying in the back of our aircraft. So we'd have a spotter, a sniper, and myself as the rear crew. We didn't have the guns on, if I can remember, I don't think we had the guns, the GPMGs on the aircraft, again, because it's London. But they had their 2 different sniper rifles and a shotgun. And when we were doing the training, we would fly with the snipers in the back, and they would fly drones in the air. And the snipers were told to fire a warning shot with a flare through the shotgun over the bow of the aircraft, so that would be a warning for the aircraft to turn around and leave the London airspace, which we were protecting. And if that then didn't work, the escalation of force would then carry on from there, and then eventually the sniper rifle would come out. Touch wood, nothing ever happened. We were very, very fortunate not to be called out for a serious incident. We were called out once, but before we took off, we were actually stood down. The training was immense. We learned all sorts of techniques on how to what aircraft we would be sort of looking after. So the Typhoons were the bigger London area. we had a 20-mile radius around the center of where the Olympics was that we would then take over. Because if it was a small aircraft like a Cessna or a Piper or something like that, the Typhoons fly too fast. Even in what I would say idle mode, they would overtake the aircraft. They'd be too quick. Whereas the Lynx top speed would match the top speed of a small aircraft, and we would be able to get close enough to be able to then deter them from coming any further. So we would hand off from the Typhoons to ourselves if the Typhoons weren't able to deter them away. That was just all part of the training, and it was again a highlight of my life. Things that I would never ever again do. Learning about why certain things get done, where we would implement certain procedures and stuff like that.
So in training, you were flying over London?
No, in training we were flying over somewhere in York. I think we did the training, and then some of the squadron went to one of the French islands. I wasn't part, for some of the reason, I don't know why, but I wasn't part of that, where they were actually shooting the drones down to see if the snipers could actually do the job. Because for them it was a first. We don't normally have snipers in the back of the aircraft, especially RAF snipers, because we've got our own in the Army. So to try and open it up to the Navy having the boat in Greenwich, the Army having the aircraft in Greenwich, and then the RAF having the snipers in the back of the aircraft, the tri-services got together and made it their security mission. So we learnt a lot about the snipers. There was a lot of sitting around doing nothing, which in hindsight was probably a better thing than having to be called out for actual events, because things could have got a bit hairy quite quickly. So
I mean, I was based at Army HQ at this time.
Oh, right.
I remember that G4S were meant to do the security.
Yes, and I don't talk about that.
No, but I say this to people. I say, if they hadn't have effed up and then we stepped in as the military, I don't think it would be as good as it was.
No,
because the military doing that, the guys and girls that I know that stepped up and got,
they were on the ground,
in the ground. They loved it.
Yeah,
it was brilliant. I think it made some of the best games that have been probably ever.
Indeed. I don't know if they got a lot of tickets, but on HMS Ocean, there were a number of tickets to different events that if you weren't working, you can apply for one of these tickets and you can go and see. I wasn't able to get to any of these because I was either on duty or resting or away on time off to go and see family and stuff like that. So, but I believe some of the guys that did go and see some of the fencing and shooting events and archery had a really, really good time.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
And we got free travel on the buses and tubes if we were in uniform, so that was really nice.
Yeah.
We could get out of London and not have to pay. I think Tony Blair was the Prime Minister at the time. He came to see us and shook our hands and he said he appreciates everything that we were doing, which was quite special as well. Yeah,
I definitely think it made those games.
Indeed, I don't envy the guys, like you say, that were on the ground, because they got thrown into massive big hangar factory type buildings on camp cots eating rubbish food. I'm sorry, I do feel for those guys, and I know a couple of them. They did not have the same experience as we did, so but they were at the London Olympics, part of the security team, so hopefully that brings up a little bit of something that they can talk about.
I think it was that part of just being there, guiding people, helping people. But you're right, they were chucked into...
They were chucked in the deep end.
Old disused camps.
Yes,
stuff
that's right. Absolutely atrocious accommodation. Some of them were on ration packs, and I tell you again, the ration packs have come on in the last couple of years, but still not your favourite food.
Yeah. So that's 2012. You're still technically part of Gütersloh then, is that right?
Yes.
And then when did you get moved on?
Right, so after the Olympics, like I was talking about before, the Wildcat helicopter started coming into play. And they were getting the Mark 7 helicopter with the skids was on its way out. The Mark 9 was just to sort of fill in a gap stop between the 7 and the Wildcat. With the crash capabilities of the seats for the crewmen in the back, the Wildcat was if I stand corrected, but it could be, I think it was 96 kilograms maximum before it then takes off your ankles if your ankles are underneath the seat, if you're there. So I was not able to fly in the Wildcat. So they said to me, you've got two choices: either go back to not being aircrew, or you go to the Bell helicopter. And the only place you can go from there is Brunei. And I thought, well, I can't see a downside to this. I get to retrade because the Bell helicopter we weren't fitting guns to the Bell helicopter. It was more for Kazivac roles in the jungle, while the SAS are training for their jungle phase, which is their last phase before they then badge or pass through. So with that, I had to then learn to become a winchman. Which was an experience, absolutely brilliant experience. Something new in the aircraft, different words of command, a totally different platform, and it was like being back on my crewman course, because although the pilots have already been pilots for other aircraft, this platform was the best way was described to me by the instructor. So leaving a Ferrari, which was the Lynx, and getting into a coach driving a bunch of children. It's that sort of, it's not fast, it's not small, it's big and slow, and you've got to concentrate, because very quickly things can go very wrong because they're old. I mean, these were used in the Vietnam War. And funny enough, one of the aircraft in Brunei were given to us from the Vietnam, from the Americans, which was part of the war. So learning to become a winchman and the pilot, there were a couple of pilots that were on the course with us, and I was one of three crewmen who were then training to become winchmen, and three of the pilots then actually came out to Brunei with me. That was the last sunshine posting for the Army Air Corps, because Belize had been closed down for the Army Air Corps at that time, and that was the last jungle phase that the SAS could use again at that time for 2012. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, sorry for going really loud.
Oh no, yeah.
Stuck my face in the mic there. Where was that posting? Sorry, you mentioned
that was. Brunei was with 7 Flight in KB. I'm trying to. That was the initials, because Kuala Belait.
Yeah, I have no idea about that area.
Yeah, it's part of the Malaysian island. Malaysia counts for, let's say, about 70% of the Malaysian island, and only 30% along the very bottom end of the coastline is Brunei.
Right.
Now, the Sultan of Brunei was one of the most wealthy men for a very long time, because the Shell company there are digging up oil from the oil rigs. And he'd built a monument for the millionth barrel of oil that he'd produced from the earth. And he took that millionth barrel and sunk it into the ground and built a monument over it, which was within walking distance from our house. And along the from the road to the coastline where the monument is, where the barrel was buried, you see the story about how the first barrels of oil were brought up and where they are now, with what they're doing. Oh. And they produce a lot of oil. Brunei, I must be honest, is a I'm going to say it's a horrible little island, only because there's so much water, and you can't have cattle, so all your meat gets brought in from Australia, because the cattle die of trench foot, because the ground is just constantly wet. Your milk gets imported to Brunei from Australia, so a 2-litre bottle of milk cost us £5.
Wow.
You know, that's a heck of a lot of money. But if you understand why, then you go, do you know what? If I'm going to drink milk and it has to be fresh, I'm going to have to pay the prices. Brunei had its challenges, because I then had to learn to fly, because in the UK we've got no jungles. So when you're flying in Brunei, everything is green, and you've got to try and find a hole where your helicopter has to hover or sink into confined areas, we call them, to be able to find the casualty. So each of the training areas have certain holes, and they would have to get that person from where they're injured to the nearest hole and then tell us where they were to be able to winch them out. I never used the winch in anger. I did a lot of training, nighttime and daytime. And nighttime, NVG is quite difficult to fly with at the best of time because it's just green and everything's just different shades of green. Now you're flying over trees and it just looks like broccoli all over the place, and you've got to try and see the hole and then talk the pilot onto the hole. I mean, they're pretty good. They know where they're going, but they need you to be able to identify that you're going to the correct hole so that you'll be able to do your job properly.
And just for anyone that doesn't know, NVG's night vision goggles.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, yeah, sorry.
We have a lot of... Are they acronyms? I guess they are.
Yes, yeah.
We have a lot of those in the military.
Yes.
So how long did you stay in Brunei? Was that like a year, 2 year?
No. I was in Brunei. I did my... what we call TQ, which is your theatre qualification, to become compliant with being able to fly in the area without having an instructor with you. So you do your different training levels with the instructor in the back. He then steps aside, sits in the back seat, and lets you carry on your job as if he wasn't there. So you do your flying tests, basically. I qualified to fly on my own, and I was in Brunei probably for about 5 months. And we were supposed to do some night flying on a Thursday afternoon. We don't start work at normal time because the sun sets a little bit later. So we started at 4 o'clock. I got to work at 3 o'clock. We were told that there was bad weather. We were going to cancel night flying. On my way home, I then had a motorbike accident, literally about 200 meters away from the patch where we lived, the accommodation.
Oh, wow.
I was traveling at 60 kilometers because they use kilometers there. I believe that's just over sort of 35, almost 40 miles an hour. Not very fast, on a single carriage road. And the local guy was overtaking a truck, said he didn't see me, coming at him with a bright red motorbike with my lights in his face. And like I've said before, I'm not a small man. I'm 6'6" and stocky built and fat. I had this accident. It was quite bad. I swerved out the way, ended up him hitting my leg, being thrown off the motorbike. By the time I actually rolled off the motorbike, the police reckon I was probably, the way that I was sitting, I was holding onto the motorbike, trying to save what I was doing, and the motorbike had opened up the throttle, and I was doing probably about double the speed, so 120. We're talking about probably 65, 70 mile an hour, in a flying suit, which is thin material, definitely not motorbike gear, but it was 34 degrees. That was my first mistake. Came off the motorbike, hit my head, was unconscious for about 2 or 3 minutes. When I came to, there was an English gentleman standing in front of me. He'd lifted my visor but not taken my helmet off. Asked if I was okay. And I said to him, I don't know what's happened. And he said, you've just been in an accident. Just lie still. We've called the paramedics. They're on the way. Are you okay? So I said, my left side is killing me. My right foot is killing me. And I don't know what's going on. He says, just lay still. They moved me out the road. And I came away from that with a minor traumatic brain injury. I damaged my left shoulder as I landed on the ground through a previous injury with a military, a rugby injury. I had a metal plate in the shoulder which got bent. I broke my foot, tore ligaments in the right knee. I was told I was a complex injury from top to bottom all the way through. I was then sent to Headley Court from Brunei to try and see if they could try and mend me as much as I could. But through all of the physical injuries, as well as some of the stuff that happened in Afghanistan and Iraq, and a marriage falling apart, losing my mom just before we moved to Brunei. They said you've got PTSD through different stages in your very short period of time. So from the time that the marriage started falling apart quite seriously, losing my mom, coming back from Afghan, moving to Brunei, and this accident all happened in the space of about 4 months, where everything came to a head. And they just said, we think your time in the military is over. Let's get you as well as you can be, as fixed as you can be, and see if we can get you back into civilian population.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Big change.
Yeah, a lot of changes,
So,
very short space of time.
Yeah, that's such a career with different areas, and then it all just
very
changes
suddenly,
very quickly.
Yeah, very suddenly just stopped.
So what year was that? Just
That was sort of October, November 2013.
2013.
Yeah,
okay.
The accident happened on the 24th of October 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long was you? I'm guessing hospital. How long was you there before you flew back to the UK?
I was in the hospital for about 2 weeks, which they had to look after me because I had a lot of road rash on my left-hand side, which they didn't pick up until the third day in the hospital because my gown kept on sticking to the wounds and stuff, and I kept on saying, don't roll me onto my left-hand side. There was a communication sort of problem because I didn't speak the language that they spoke at the time, and I just kept on saying, don't roll me on here. And they sort of looked at me, and I just had enough, and I pulled the gown up, and the matron went absolutely spastic and grabbed some of the nurses and was like, this man's been in the hospital for 3 days and nobody has looked at this after him telling you over and over again there's something wrong. They then sorted that out, and I've got some wicked scars on the side, so just reminders always to wear my leathers now, and just doesn't matter how hot it is, it's not your fault. It's 90% of the time it's not the motorcyclist's fault, but through somebody else's actions which will cause the accident. And it's very close to home, because you start relaxing. I'm almost home, I'll just relax a little bit, and it's that time. Both car and motorbike accidents, I believe, are quite often not too far away from residence. So yeah.
And then you get posted back to the UK, is that right?
Yes. So I was still posted in Brunei, still based out there, but I was coming back and forth to the UK, to Headley Court. My first admission to Headley Court was a 6-week admission, which was quite long, which they then put me into the complex trauma unit, which was, again, from head to toe. Headley Court have got a number of sort of units. They've got their lower limbs, their neurological departments, and then the complex trauma, which was where I was, where a lot of the amputees and stuff like that. Now, when I was told I was going to Headley Court, I'd heard of it, and I knew that that's where our soldiers would go after Afghanistan, after losing limbs. And I'd never really been around people that have lost limbs, especially young guys who are normally fighting fit. And like I say, young guys, we're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And I wasn't quite sure about how to approach these guys, because I've seen on as you do, you watch TV, and people are very bitter when they hear they're losing a limb. It's a traumatic experience. I've not had that, obviously, but I can only imagine it must be one of the worst things that they could go through, depending on where they are in their point of recovery. So for the first sort of 3 days, I literally just kept to myself, didn't say anything. I was in a room with a young Marine. I won't mention his name, but he was there for his first admission after being involved in an IED in Afghanistan as well. Very nice young guy. We got to become very good friends. But I would just literally keep to myself, wouldn't say a word to anybody. In Headley Court, they try and get you to attend your classes, so basically getting back into routine. But these aren't normal classes. They're your fitness, your physio, your occupational therapist classes, and all that sort of stuff. And after a little while, I've heard a lot of banter between the guys, and I just thought, it's not my place to say anything because those guys might know each other. And after the third day, somebody had mentioned something to me, and I just said, "Oh, you, at least I've got both legs." And he said, "Oh, you bipods think you're something special," or something along those lines. And I immediately knew that it's a different situation for them, but for me, I don't need to be scared because they're still normal people, and I don't need to, for lack of a better word, pussyfoot around these guys. They were hardened soldiers. They had a sense of humor, and they have gone through dark periods of time, and their way, as most military people, to work through dark periods of time is with dark humor. And we would take the piss out of each other all the time. And from then on, I've got some really, really good friends that I've made in Headley Court. I don't get to see them as much as I used to, but with Headley Court, it brings me on to the next part of my sort of recovery period, which is when I was introduced to the Invictus Games.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So before we go on to that, that's going to be very exciting.
Yeah.
Headley Court is the rehabilitation place for soldiers. And if, again, I've been there. Before the guys get there, and please help me out here, is it Solihull they go to? As soon as they've been blown up, they go to, I think it's Solihull.
There's a hospital, yes, in Birmingham.
And then they get, I'm pretty sure it's Solihull, it's just on the outskirts of Birmingham.
That's right, Queen Elizabeth Hospital, I think is the name of the hospital. Yeah. So they'll come from Afghan straight into the hospital, get their initial sort of preparation for amputations, all that sort of stuff there, and then
once they're there, they come back. So as you say, they've gone through some of the dark times.
Yes.
No doubt there would be more to come.
Yes.
And later on, when we get some of the guys on the podcast, hopefully they can share what that's like.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. The banter we have is not seen in Civvy Street.
It's second to none.
Even with the issues with missing a leg or unable to walk.
Without I've got to be very careful what I say here. We went to dinner with some of the guys that I'd got very close to, and they got there before me. I quickly went to draw money, and I came back, and the waitress asked me, "Are you here with somebody?" So immediately, without thinking and forgetting that she's a civilian and I'm in this military sort of state of mind and stuff, I said, "Yes, I'm with the spastic retards at that table." The look on her face was just classic. And I said, it's okay, hold on, because I might not look spastic, but I'm part of them. And I was just digging a hole, so I said, I'm with those guys. And I then started realizing that not everyone is on the same level as what we are.
No.
She after us going there a couple of times, she would then start getting to know us. We'd take a bit of Mickey out of her, and she would then feel free to do the same to us, and we grew to know each other quite well. But the look initially on her face was just like, you can't say that. And I was like, well hold on, I'm part of them. I'm okay, we're okay. And the look of horror was just fantastic, just brilliant.
And I think because we're in that little bubble of I suppose
dark humor,
but we're injured, and therefore the other person that's in the same course or group as us, and everybody else within Headley Court, they understand
where we
are.
They
don't judge us. They
exactly.
don't, like when you go back to a normal unit, you feel like you can't run
say
anymore.
Things.
So it's definitely
coping mechanisms, and again, for somebody who hasn't been through something like that, it's like trying to explain to someone who doesn't know what PTSD is. It's I don't know, for those who don't know what PTSD stands for, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. If you don't know anybody who has it, or you don't suffer with it yourself, it's very difficult to explain to people what it's about. It's a very difficult subject, and each, not only military people, civilians suffer with it as well. Each person has their own experience which will trigger them to do or feel different things. So it's a very personal thing. So you can't really explain it to anybody. And my partner is she's very, very good, and she's very sensitive to picking up when I will have a problem. So military people who have been injured and have these sort of issues will turn to dark humor because it's a way that we can express ourselves. And many civilians, when I became a civilian, I was still in that military frame of mind, and I opened my mouth and said something, and very quickly I was aware of what I can and can't say around people, because civilians are a different breed, and no military person who's ever served will ever be a civilian again. They will always be an ex-military or a veteran, and nobody can ever take that away from you. So so just remember that if there are guys that are looking at leaving and struggling.
And whenever you get back with another veteran,
indeed,
you just go back straight into it, and it's great.
It might not be the same, it might just be worse, and that's the family of military people. You might not be in that person's back pocket, you might not see them every day of your life, you might not see them for a year, like many of the people that I know, but when you do get together, it's as if you just crack on, and not a heartbeat is missed. You just you carry on where you left off, and it's all nobody's, oh, you didn't phone me once a day, you haven't spoken to me for months, so I'm going to be pissed off with you. It's not like that, and that's something that military people understand, that life goes on, and I think that's something that we learn through going on tour, going on exercises. You come back and your family aren't going to be where you left them. They've moved on as well. They've experienced different things while you've been away, as they understand you have as well. And that was a big learning curve for me, because I came back, and part of the breakup of our marriage was I wanted to assume the dad role again, where my wife had been dad and mom for every time that I was away, and my daughter didn't understand what was going on, so she would always look to mom as to what was going on. So we as military people just deal with things differently, and that makes us different in a good way, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, 2014.
Yes.
Invictus Games. You get introduced to these games.
Yeah.
How?
I could probably name the guy's name, Lee Bland. One of the amputees who was with me in Headley Court. Got to know him quite well. He was going to do archery practice, and in South Africa, before I left, I'd been introduced to the compound bow, which is now a totally different style of bow to what Lee was shooting as a recurve. We get mocked as saying we've got training wheels on ours, where the recurve guys don't, and the recurve guys hold like all the weight of the bow the whole time, whereas we cheat as compound bows. We get a 60 or a 80% let off after a certain point. I was part of the compound bow team in South Africa, looking to hunt with the bow. Then I thought, I can do this archery stuff, but I don't have a bow here in the UK. I will learn with a training bow with Lee. We'll shoot a little bit at Headley Court. And he then said, you're really good at this. Why don't you join the Invictus Games? And I said, the what? He then told me a little bit more about Prince Harry starting up a veteran or a injured soldiers sporting event, like a small Olympics, a mini Olympics, after he'd been to America and noticed the Warrior Games, if I'm not mistaken. You might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, where military injured service personnel can come and compete against people of a similar sort of level and standard. I thought this would be the most amazing thing I've done in years. Sport would then be a recovery tool for myself, helping with the PTSD, taking away whatever demons I was dealing with at the time, and all I would do is focus on hitting the gold all the time. And for my mindfulness, it was the most amazing thing, and still is to this day. Absolutely amazing. Made it to the Invictus Games as a novice archer. Didn't apply for any of the other sports. I didn't know that at the time that we could. Later on, I would do different sports. But unfortunately, didn't make it into the team. Got knocked out before the competition had actually started. There were some really good archers out there, but I had an absolutely epic adventure getting to that point and then supporting the rest of the guys and learning more about the guys that actually did make it through and more about the sports, more about what Invictus stood for.
So this is where you and I met.
That's correct, yes.
So
yeah.
You just mentioned you didn't make it. Well, you did, because you were part of the British team.
Part of the team, yeah. I suppose you're right.
So
you
did make it.
Yeah.
We wore that flag on our shoulder,
shirts,
on our shirts again.
Yeah.
And as I said in episode 1, I think there was like 133
Yeah, we were a big contingent,
of the British team.
Yeah.
So I actually met Daniel Bruce, is also known as. I met him because he was my roommate.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate event for you. Yeah.
So you're my roomie from 2014. London, and just, I don't know if this is needed, but you snore like a bear.
Yeah, like a gorilla. Yeah, and that hasn't stopped. In fact, it's just got worse.
And I remember having to throw things at you because you said to me, I think you said, "Bro, if I snore, just throw stuff at me."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Cool." So I armed myself. But
there were a number of projectiles that were thrown at me over the first evening. I remember that.
From boots to trainers.
I remember the boots. I don't remember a lot, but I do remember the boot. There was a size 9 boot that came my way.
Hey, it worked.
Yeah, it did. It definitely did.
But yeah, so you made the team. With the opening ceremony, we all walked
marched
on
through.
And that was phenomenal. And then stood around where Prince Harry was talking to everybody.
That's it. That was through the Olympic Stadium.
That's
right.
And Michelle Obama was on the big screen. And,
yes, indeed. Yeah.
Right. So you did.
Yeah,
make
I did make the team. I should have said I didn't get to where I wanted. I didn't medal, but I did make the team. Yeah, you're right. Actually.
Right. And then we had, so the way archery works is that you do like a round where everybody shoots a certain amount of arrows. In this instance, it was 60 arrows.
That's right.
And therefore, that ranks everybody. And then for this instance, it was the top 16 that went through.
Yep.
That's the bit that
I didn't qualify through the next stage. That's right.
But you shot at the Invictus Games.
Yeah.
You competed at the Invictus Games.
Yeah.
And you represented the UK. So
I didn't look at it like that. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
And then you were there to support the other guys and girls that got through to the knockout stage.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you did your part.
Yeah.
You did your part.
Yeah, cheers, man.
And so, the Invictus Games, all in all, how was your experience?
Wow. I was pretty good at certain sports, sort of field sports, when I was growing up through school and stuff like that. When I left school, I didn't do any sport, any competitive, anything. The Invictus Games was by far the first and biggest competition I have ever had in my life. I reckon the next best thing would be the Olympics. And even then, it would be on par. It wouldn't be any better. It would be on par. So being able to represent the country that I fought for and live in a sporting event is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing.
And I think you also went to the other sports, like wheelchair basketball. Didn't you go and support that?
I supported those, yes. Yeah. I was then introduced to wheelchair rugby in the, was it the golden box or something? It's basically
copper box.
Copper box, that's the badger. Yeah, I knew it had some metal in it. The copper box. And when I saw that, I thought, you know what, I could use some of this in my life. It was changed from to wheelchair rugby from murder ball, I believe. Okay. And there was a bit of a taboo about the name, and they were like, you can't really call it that. I got in touch with a couple of people that I saw that were playing wheelchair rugby, and immediately got involved.
That was after Invictus finished?
That was after the Invictus finished, Started training, went up to Birmingham. I think they were training once a month, and for the next 2.5 years, that's what I did.
Nice.
every month, go up to Birmingham and train, sometimes twice a month, when it got to sort of closer to qualifying and closer to the Invictus Games 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you trialled for the second...
I did, yes. With the second Invictus Games, they were going to Orlando in America, and they were going to be part of the Disney sort of place where we stayed. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to just try out for archery. By then I'd changed from recurve to buying or getting sponsored by Help for Heroes to then get my own bow, a compound bow again. So I changed the discipline in archery because I'd already shot as a novice before. I would have to go into the open category anyway. And I thought, with my shoulder not being able to cope with a full weight of the bow, there's different ways, and I know the compound bow, and it was an event that I could join. So I went over to the dark side, as a lot of people would say, but I also took part in the wheelchair rugby because I was seen to be able to cope and do quite well with the wheelchair rugby. With that, it helped my progression in sport with my mental illnesses. The archery would do the finesse and the skill and the mindfulness part. And when I went to wheelchair rugby, I was encouraged to smash into people as hard as I can in a wheelchair. And I just thought that brings out the anger and the frustration that I have with myself, with my situation, with things that are going on in my head, with my demons. And I found that I was very good at it. And although I wasn't the quickest, I wasn't the best, I was able to hold up with a lot of the people that were in the team, and managed to qualify and get through and play and actually medal. We got our bronze medal for that one in Orlando.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to back up here.
Yeah.
Time out and all that. So
sorry, I'm getting quite excited about this.
That's really good. That's really good. So you finish Invictus 2014 London.
Yes.
You learn about wheelchair rugby.
Yep.
You start training up in Birmingham with the team.
Yep.
Learning more about it. You find it's another sport that helps your injuries with sport recovery.
Yep. Another string to the bow,
Another
as it
string
were.
to the bow.
No pun intended.
And then you choose to trial out for the second ever Invictus Games.
Yep.
And you get selected.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. That was an adventure again in itself. You were part of the training as well for the selection.
That's correct.
We went up to Bath, if I'm not mistaken, the first time that the selection process was at the Bath University. Again, I was introduced to new sports like powerlifting and a lot of the track and field events that I just had no interest in at the time. But I was able to do very well with my archery because I had my own bow set up to myself. I'd done a lot of training with yourself, in fact, down at Andover Archers.
That's right.
You got me into that club. We did a lot of training together with that, did a lot of training for the wheelchair rugby. Got chosen for the team. It was, wow, Disney, here we come.
There you go. So this time you're doing a multi-sport.
That's it.
You're wearing the flag on your chest
For
again.
a second time, yeah.
So that's all really good.
Yes, yeah.
So this is 2014, 2016.
Yep.
Now, before we continue down the route of sports, are you still in the military at this time?
No. Before I actually went... before I went to the first games in 2014...
Yeah.
They called me up for I was still in the military, but I wasn't working because I was still going to Headley Court back and forth. They then introduced me to the GROW program, Gradual Reintegration to Work, where they very slowly try and get you back into the green kit or the multicam as it is now, trying to see if you're able to get back into the military and cope. As a crewman, they knew that there were going to be certain factors that I might struggle with. PTSD is not normally something that they would allow anyone with being near weapons, and I was a weapons instructor, a small arms instructor. So the captain of the squadron, the 2IC at the time, knew me from Germany in Gütersloh, And he said to me, look, we're going to take you under our wing. We want to introduce you to the GROW program because you're with a PRU, Personal Recovery Unit, in Aldershot at the moment, with 101st Brigade. We want to see if you can manage to get to work, and if not, how we're going to then get you back into transition, back into Civvy Street. I think I lasted 3 days. I went into work. It was nothing arduous. It really wasn't. And I thought I was doing really well. And that's the thing with PTSD and minor traumatic brain injuries and stuff like that. You fool yourself into thinking you're doing better than you are. And as a sideline sort of thing, as a male South African who's the head of the home in the military, you're taught not to show fear. You're not to show weakness. And I was like, I'm not going to let this get the better of me. I'm going to get better. I'm going to go back to the military. I'm going to be a crewman again. Like I say, within 3 days of very, very menial tasks, literally just organizing paperwork and stuff, my 2IC came in and he said to me, can we have a chat in the office? And I was like, oh, yes, sure, thinking he was going to give me another job. He then said to me, look, I know you. I worked with you. We know each other from Gütersloh. We know each other well. I came to see you in Headley Court at your worst time. Yes, you're doing better, but you're struggling, aren't you? And I was like, no. He goes, enough. We're friends now. It's not rank here. We're friends. You're not coping, are you? And I said, no. I'm finding it very difficult to be able to concentrate on the smallest task. And he said to me, fine. I am going to put you forward to the DCMH in Tidworth, which is District Mental Health Community or something like that. It's the guys that deal with PTSD, with psychologists and stuff in Tidworth. And he said, let's get you sorted, but we don't think your career is going to carry on now. At DCMH, a South African psychologist, a very nice guy, said to me, you won't be going back to service. Your time is done, which was quite a shock. But I'd already almost reached my 12-year point at this time. So I was already thinking I need to make a decision as to, do I stay in the military and do my full 22 or 24 if you take Veng, or do I leave at the half-year point and still get half a pension? But then, I was 36, 37 at the time, looking at retrading and becoming a qualified engineer of some sorts, and then going back to Civvy Street and leaving the military life behind. So that decision was taken away from me, which was a very good thing for me, because I think if I had to make that decision, I would have beat myself up even now and for a long time after, thinking, should I have stayed? Would I have been better? Would I have been able to cope? What if? That decision was taken for me by a number of people for very good reasons. I would never have been really able to be around weapons anymore. So the crewman would have been gone. I would have had to go back to ground crew. I would have been unhappy. So it was the better thing for me to have happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they made the decision.
That's right. Yeah. So the psychologist made the decision, and he said, for military personnel, you need to go through a medical board process. Now, for a lot of people who don't know what injured soldiers have to go through, this medical board take a look at your records, and they see what you've done and what your qualifications are. They then look at your injuries and your reasons for being at the medical board, which are obviously drastic enough for you to be attending this. And essentially, they ask you if you think you can stay in the military. Physically, knowing that you've got to do your press-ups, sit-ups and runs in a certain time. If you don't pass those fitness tests, you're not fit enough to be in the military. With my complex traumas and my shoulder operations and all sorts of things, I wasn't able to do the physical side, but more to the point, the fact that I had PTSD. That's already quite serious. And they said to me, there are people in the military with PTSD and with injuries, but you have a lot of both, quite serious as well. Would you, if you could, stay in the military? And I said, I don't think so. I don't think I would be able to, in my mind, trust myself to be able to look after somebody else in a war zone, which is the worst case scenario. But we've trained for that sort of stuff. And it was a very difficult decision for me. And they said, look, we ask you that to try and see where your mindset is at that point. We've already convened the 3 doctors that were on my board, had already had the pre-medical, and then at my medical said, because mainly because you can't do the physical, as well as your PTSD, we're going to recommend that we medically discharge you. And again, that decision then made it final that was the end of my military career. Okay. Not there and then. I would have to go through processes of doing certain courses, CRS courses, I think is what they were called. But basically, retraining back to getting you to become a civilian, okay, and what qualifications you'd need to carry on getting a new career.
So when did you officially leave the military?
My last day in the military was the 30th or the 31st of September. I can't remember how many days, but 2015.
Okay.
Was the last day that I wasn't wearing uniform for about 2 years at that point, but that was my last day that the military paid a paycheck into my salary bank account.
September
2015. Yep.
12 years.
12 years service.
Corporal.
Yep.
Okay. So a very decent career.
Yes, I'm very proud of what I've done.
Yeah, absolutely. And you should. And I've learned so much already.
Yeah.
But you had a cracking career.
I was very lucky. Really what we call Gucci postings. I got to do stuff that normal Green Army don't get to do.
Yeah.
A lot's changed, I believe, in the military from friends that I know now that are still in. Very, very special part of my life.
So I suppose in some way, with being discharged in 2015, having Invictus Games 2014, and having Invictus Games 2016, either side of that, probably helped.
Yes,
right?
Indeed. It was a way for me to cope. Especially, like I say, when I got involved with the wheelchair rugby, I became a very angry man. In the time that I was leaving the military, I became a very, very angry person, a very hateful, vengeful person, and that was, as I know now, a big part of the PTSD that was coming in. I wasn't able to cope. I didn't have what I needed, although not helpful heroes, but the Headley Court people had given me certain tools. I hadn't used them, and I wasn't, for some reason, I wasn't in the right frame of mind to start looking at helping myself. I was expecting other people to help me. Just a really dark time of my life. Very depressed, needing to be on painkillers, sleeping tablets, antipsychotics, things to help me with PTSD. It was a very dark time of my life, and with that, I looked to sport to better myself and stop being this hateful, vengeful person. And don't get me wrong, I'm still working very hard on that. It's from people around me, I'm 100 times better than I was when I was in this dark place, and it's mainly thanks to sport and the camaraderie back in with the people that were in the military with me, people that are suffering with the same sort of things. It's a massive part of my life.
So you get selected, you go out to Orlando.
Yeah.
You're part of essentially a new sport for you.
Yes, indeed.
But as you mentioned very briefly earlier,
you
and the UK team were successful.
Yes. So with the we only got beaten by the Denmark team in the sort of the bronze and knockout period. So we made it right to the finals, semi-finals, and we did really well. But the Danish team just had, I forget the guy's name, small little blonde guy, double amputee from Denmark, this guy would run circles around our best players, and we look at the videos and we're like, how the hell does somebody that small just use the wheelchair in such amazing ways? And like I say, there was no ways I would ever be, a quarter of what he was. They were the better team on the day. We managed to walk away with a bronze medal, though. We beat the Australian team in that match, and after we got beaten by Denmark, we were a bit harsh. I must be honest. We made a point of absolutely destroying the Australian team. I think we walked away with 40 to 2 points.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
okay.
we annihilated them, and we were pissed off. We'd worked hard to get to where we were, and we were not going away without a medal. So it was pretty. The Australian team had a hammering. Yeah.
Is that a proud moment? Getting given
that Prince Harry gave our medals for that, and I'd never been that close to him before. We'd seen him at the sort of trials, sort of processes and stuff, but never had he been really that close. And I had a horrendous sort of serial killer looking beard, and I was just some horrendous creature, zombie thing. And when he handed me my medal, he put it over my head. He said, "Is this the beard of power?" And I said, "Yes, sir, that's definitely it." And one of my prouder moments, getting given the medal from Prince Harry, and yeah.
Brilliant.
He's always been amazing.
Yeah. He's a good guy.
He's awesome.
He's a good guy.
He's awesome. Yeah.
Proud moment for you.
Yeah.
And then, does your sports recovery continue after Orlando?
It does, not as much as I'd like. In the Orlando thing, we got bronze for compound shooting as well. We got the medal for that. Yeah,
we skipped over archery.
Yeah, not a problem. No, for the archery side. Myself and two other team members, they were for the shootout. There were 4 of us that had made it to the category, and myself and Phil, the other competitor from the UK team. We had shot exactly the same score, but what got me onto the final team was the amount of 10s or X's that I shot compared to his, and I literally think I'd beat him by 2 or 3. It was that close a competition. I feel really sorry because I think Phil really wanted that and possibly could have done really well with being part of the team, but I got chosen to be part of that team. I think we were shooting against France because the American team was shooting against Canada, and we got to shoot against France, and I'm still friends with some of the French archers from that competition, and we were able to just focus enough to be able to beat them. So we took the bronze medal for that as well. So we walked away from that with 2 medals.
Nice.
So a highlight of my life again. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. As for recovery after the games, I've trialed for a lot of sports. Fortunately, after the Invictus games, 2017, I was part of the Warrior Games.
Nice.
Again, archery, but I tried swimming, wheelchair basketball because I didn't have the rugby at that point. And I did the 3 sports, came away with a silver medal for swimming, which was my worst sport. Didn't make it anywhere with the archery. Unfortunately, there were some amazing American archers. Again, some of my best friends on Facebook. When I was doing my archery, just before the competition that actually started, I got approached by the Help for Heroes team who ran the sort of sporting event. They then said to me, "Would you like to be the captain?" And as we were doing archery, I just thought, it's for the archery team, I can handle that. It's wow, I feel really honored. When it got to the evening meeting and they said, "We'd like to welcome the team captain." And I was like, I wonder who they've chosen. And they called my name. I just sat there for a second thinking, no, I'm the archery team captain. And they were like, no, you're the UK team captain. I shit my pants. I didn't know what to say. I thought, wow, that's possibly a bigger chunk to bite off than I was aware. Really, really honoured.
Nice.
My vice captain was Pete Lauder, sergeant in the RAF. And we were just so honoured to be team captain and vice captain. Walking out and bringing the UK team after the American sort of Warrior Games set had gone through was, again, another highlight in my life, and very honoured to have been chosen for that.
Wow.
Did some really good sport. But after that, to be honest, I haven't really done much competition work. We've just been through or still going through the COVID process. Archery has become quite difficult to be able to do because there's regulations as to who's on the range and why, and set periods that you can go on there. So it's taken a bit of a step back, but I would like to get back into archery. Due to the shoulder injuries and stuff, I will never be able to play wheelchair rugby again, which is a gut shot, because that was something that was my fitness, my going out and doing something. But through the injury, like I say, that's not going to happen. I will do more damage than so I enjoyed the time that I did it. I medalled. I'm happy with that. So archery and I'm into a bit of shooting as we're in the countryside now. I'm a deer stalker, so I've done loads of different things, which I suppose count as sport. Yeah.
Just on the Warrior Games. Amazing that silver medal in a sport that you
I didn't even really try that hard for, to be honest.
And the fact that you were captain of Team UK, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty
special.
Impressive. But whereabouts was that held?
Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah, it was the Chicago Games, and I believe it was the first time that they had done it in a civilian sort of setting, because most of them are done on Army, RAF or Air Force bases or Navy bases. So we were actually in civilian life, which was great because we had freedom to go.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. So I suppose we've gone through an awful lot.
And
I just want to say that's been really cool. I've learned so much. You had such an awesome career. You've done phenomenal with sport. At such big games. That's so great. But I just want to touch on, aside from sport, what was your transition like into civilian street? Because for a lot of us, that's quite difficult. We don't need to go into too much detail if you don't want to, but it'd be good to hear what your experience of transition was like.
Well, we're in 2020 now, so I've been out of the army just shy of 5 years. And I'm still not coping, but I'm still not in the mindset that civilians do things differently or don't do things like we would in the military. We are disciplined in the military. We don't have to have someone looking over our shoulders, making sure we actually do our work in the military, because we know that there's consequences if you don't do what you are asked and how you're asked to do it. My transition has been and still is very, very difficult. I'm, again, of the mindset where if I ask somebody to do something, I don't want to be looking over their shoulders. I expect them to do it to the best of their ability as quickly as they can. Civilians, and please, I'm broad paintbrushing everybody here, which is not fair, but most of the guys that I've worked with are they're actually too laid back, and it's just the phrase that absolutely grips my shit: can't be asked. That is something that breaks me. If I hear it, I just want to strangle somebody, because for me that's an act of defiance. It means that you're not listening to what I've asked you to do, and you're just basically wiping your ass off on me, and it's not acceptable. And as a military person, ex-military person, I'm looking at this, and it's an act of defiance, and it's almost as bad as treason to me, because I'm being given an order from above, and I'm then disseminating and delegating that job to you. You can't be asked to do it because you're a lazy fuck. Kills me. So I've learned in civilian street, if I want anything to be done properly, I do it myself. I don't have the time to explain to people how I want things done, and it's partly my fault, I must admit, because I'm a very autocratic person. If I ask you to do something, I want it done that way. You might get it done the way you do it, but I'm not happy with that. And that's something that I have to deal with in my life. So transition into civilian life is an ongoing battle for me.
Okay.
And I think it will be for a very long time. Just because of the lack of discipline. And that's where it comes to, that lack of discipline and that lack of feeling proud about something that you've done and you've accomplished. Whereas we've fought for our country, we've fought for these people, and they can't be asked. Just, it's not acceptable. Not acceptable.
So is there anything you can advise someone that's maybe just about to leave, that's about to go into the civilian sector? I know you've been through it for 5 years, but is there anything you can share that might assist or help them?
Yeah, I would definitely try and help yourself by preparing yourself for civilian life. It is very different. You're going to deal with people that are very different and don't understand military way of thinking. Yes, there's many things that you can try and prepare yourself for, but be aware and be a little bit forgiving about the way that things get done in civilian street.
Okay.
It's very difficult. You don't get as much money initially. Like I say, I've been at the army for 5 years now, and I'm now, as a qualified air conditioning engineer, only earning what I was 5 years ago in the army as a corporal.
Okay.
I took a massive pay cut in the beginning. Started looking for jobs where I thought I was earning this, I should still be earning that, and civilians look at it and go, you've got a couple of qualifications that we can transfer, but you need to start at the bottom again, and that was a hit for me. So be prepared that you possibly will take a pay cut. Things are done differently in Civi Street. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a freight train. There's good things that will come your way, and you will miss the military. I do every day of my life, especially seeing the aircraft fly around our house and go, I used to be part of that corps. You will always miss it. And people ask me if you knew when you started the army, if you knew what you know now was going to happen to you, would you do it? And I always say, within a heartbeat. It's the highlight of my life is being in the military. It's other than my daughter being born and things like that, it's the discipline and the structure that's been brought to my life that I will carry on forever, and nobody can take that away from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Man, it's been
a good
it's
journey.
been an adventure on this podcast, hey? Yeah, we've discussed some really good stuff and some more sensitive stuff, but it's been amazing.
And I hope you've enjoyed, in some ways, reliving your career.
It's been a
good.
walk down memory lane, yeah, as the old people would say,
Yeah. So, thanks so much for
Cheers,
man.
Thanks
Thanks
you.
so much for your time.
Thank you.
And most importantly, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much, and what you're doing for veterans like myself and bringing this to the wider public is an amazing feat, and I really wish you the best of luck with your adventure as you go forward.
Thank you so much.
No worries, man.
This is Military Veterans Podcast. Out.